Okay, well, it's 7:01, so welcome everybody, and I see people coming in now, and I suspect we'll have some more people coming in. So it's another Thursday night, so we've got lots of things to talk about. So I'm going to take the screen here for a second and put something up here. So of course that's our cover slide. So I guess the first thing I'll do is ask John, greet John, and ask John to say howdy to everybody. And
Hey, Kirk.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. So the usual announcements before we get into the session here. Thank you for joining us for Survive and Thrive in Times of Crises. I'm John Zink with the PHCC Educational Foundation, and tonight Kirk will be doing another one of these great sessions. Again, it's, as always, a participation required session. We want to hear from you. We want to hear you talk. The best way to handle that is to make sure your microphone is muted at all times, except when you want to chime in with something, or if Kirk is asking you a question that you want to respond to. Just keep your microphone muted in the meantime, and try to remember, if you are done talking, to hit that mute button again before you walk away from the keyboard with the dog barking in the background. Appreciate that. And if you want to, you can use the raise your hand function in the WebEx, and that way it'll signal that at the next stopping point we can capture your question then. The chat box will let you send a chat message directly to me or Kirk. So if you want to send something just to me asking a question, not for everybody, go ahead and use that function. And always remember that we are recording this session, so please share and share freely, but don't share anything that you would not like to be public information. And we will get into tonight's session. Thank you so much for being here.
All right, so thanks, John. And so we haven't made this, we haven't made a pitch for the foundation for a couple of weeks. And so if people want to participate in the foundation, how would they do that?
I can put something in the chat box where you can make a contribution over your cell phone. That's the easiest way to do it. Please don't send us checks. There's nobody at the office to get them these days. But we are always looking for you to participate in things like this. So when Kirk asks for you guys to contribute to putting together a spreadsheet on change orders or create a tool for the program, that those tools get used in different functions going forward. Some of the things that we've talked about in some of these sessions, I'm working into an article for the next newsletter for PHCC, so that more people can benefit from those tools. So please make sure it's important to participate and contribute in these sessions, but also outside of the session with those tools, because those tools go on to live a much longer life, helping lots of other people down the line as well. So thank you for your participation in doing that.
Great. Thanks, John. So for me, so the next slide, this is again just a cover slide, but again, I've got some links on here. I've got a link to Gmail, that account that I'm using for this class, for a YouTube channel. All the recordings are up usually the next day. And then also I put, like, well, so I'm gonna make a pitch. Somebody needs to mute their mic, please. So I'm gonna make a pitch to everybody, because I haven't made this pitch in the past, other than the pitch to mute your mic. So I'd like to ask you to do a couple things for me. One is I'd like you to go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. And obviously, YouTube doesn't cost you anything. But it's a brand new YouTube channel, and it's got these videos on it. And so so I want you and 1,000 friends to subscribe, so YouTube recognizes me. And then also go to my LinkedIn page, and if you like what we're doing, then I'm always happy to have recommendations on my LinkedIn page. So a pitch that I haven't made before, but if you're so inclined, do that. another comment I'll make is I saw Cindy from the foundation on here. So Cindy Sheridan. So Cindy, are you on right now?
Hello, Kirk. I am.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great. It's spring, time to get out there and spread COVID, right? So
It's raining tonight in this area.
yeah, we had a little rain today, but sunshine's coming your way. So thanks to Cindy, because Cindy and John, of course, work hand in hand at the foundation, and we couldn't do any of this without both of them. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And so again, to remind everybody tonight and throughout the program, keep your action item list. I'll ask you periodically what you're doing. In fact, that's where we're going to start tonight. A little bit, come to class with questions, problems, issues that you're dealing with, and don't be a floater or a free rider. So today I had, every day is an interesting day and dynamic day, but today I had a couple of interesting things happen, and so I'll share them with you. They're going to lead us into the first part of what I really want to talk about tonight. And so just about 10-15 minutes before I got on the call here, I was talking with Casey Long, who is a senior vice president with Helix Electric in California. And he and I were talking about some other things because we're friends and we have some things in common. And so one of the things he said that I thought was really good is, well, he asked me, we were talking about kids. I have kids at home right now who are doing their schooling virtually. Who's doing that right now?
My daughter is down in Florida.
Okay, so your daughter is down in Florida. Have you talked to her at all about her experiences with that?
She doesn't care for it too much. She misses the social aspect. And because it's new, they've had some issues. Microsoft had some issues the first week with some of the programs and all.
Yeah. Okay, what about the rest of you? Who else has got kids? I know, John, I know you've got kids who are doing some of that.
Yeah, the Fairfax County school system has been working for 3 weeks to roll it out, then roll it out again, and then roll it out again. And their head of IT just resigned because of the issues. And the school superintendent is probably not far behind.
Were they forced out, or were done with it?
All the wording in the news is stepped down. So who knows?
Yeah. But who else is involved with any of that? And so what have y'all? I'll ask it a different way. What have y'all heard about all of this virtual schooling that's happening?
Well, this is Dan from Boston. I mean, most of it's, pass or fail. The way it works for my kids, they're both in high school. One's a senior, one's a sophomore. They get about 2 to 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
With different projects and different things. Both my kids go to a vocational school and they're in electrical, so during shop week, their related teacher will give them, projects to do, schematic drawings of the house, drawing out circuitry, different things to keep them occupied. And
yeah.
I mean, I think it's working out pretty well. Obviously, I think it's a lot easier when they're in a classroom setting, and I'm fortunate my kids are independent workers on that end, and I probably stopped being able to help them with their math and 5 years ago. So on my end, but it's been working out okay.
Good. Well, at Purdue, of course, we're doing everything virtually, and I've done virtual classes for a couple of years now, and so I'm pretty comfortable with it. One thing I've noticed with the students, and so I do all different levels, right? So undergraduate, graduate, continuing ed, etc. And so the one class, well, the one program I've taught in for a couple of years now online is it's a graduate program for construction management for industry professionals like y'all. and they are already predisposed to doing everything virtually and online, and so really haven't had any hiccups with that at all. And so that's gone really well. I've noticed with one of my classes that I teach on Monday nights on sustainable development construction, that there seems to be a weariness that comes with students who aren't used to participating virtually, and by weariness I mean it's harder if you're not used to it, and people lose some of their motivation, I think, and so it's a lot harder to read the authors, to read the instructor, those kinds of things. So I noticed a little bit of weariness with that, and a little uncertainty, I guess. But Casey and I with Helix were talking about 6:45 tonight about his kids. His kids are, of course, experiencing that. Now his kids are younger kids. They're elementary school age kids, and they were using Zoom. And what have y'all heard about? Now I'm sure some of you have used Zoom. I've used Zoom. What have you heard about Zoom?
Zoom bombing.
Yeah. So what's that mean?
I'm not sure the details exactly, but people can join meetings that they're not invited to, so they're just coming in and disrupting meetings.
Yeah, so there's some Zoom bombing, some disruption. Apparently, the Chinese are hacking it. Of course, it's the favorite enemy for everybody right now, unfortunately. And so Chinese are stealing, hacking, and of course, there's some of the Zoom bombing. There was some instances of people putting inappropriate things up to Zoom meetings and things like that. I still think it's a good platform, but what Casey and I were talking about that really leads to back to you and to your companies is with all of us being forced to doing online education, if you're in K-12 or even at the university level these days, the problems, for example, with Zoom bombing, yeah, Dave, that's fine. The problem with Zoom bombing is
thank you.
That typically these kinds of things wouldn't be fixed. It would take a while to work through these glitches. 18 to 24 months is a pretty typical time in the software development world for really debugging and deglitching all of these kinds of things. But one of the things that we've seen in the IT, in the software industry, is other platforms fixing these kind of glitches at a much more rapid pace. And so where that led our discussion to is we need to look at our industry and our companies through the same lens. And the question I think to ask is now I let Dave annotate, so now I'm stuck here. So hang on, Dave. I'm gonna stop you doing that right now. Just a second. All right, folks, bring it right back up here. The question is how can we use what we're going through right now as an efficiency accelerator to debug and deglitch our companies at a much faster pace than we typically think normal? What do y'all think about that? So the point is, software companies have had to adapt very rapidly because of the crisis and the opportunity, and they have done that. They've turned on a dime, and I know in our industries we're doing some of the same things. But where else in your companies, or what areas in your company, should you be grabbing hold of this idea of efficiency accelerator and deglitching your company? So how can you use this as an opportunity to turn your company in a different direction in a much faster time?
It was brought up, this is Nick, Wisconsin, last week a little bit about the Zoom meetings, just the time that it saves. As a GC, to set up a meeting by sending off an email and everyone joins in, saves me a lot of road time that really doesn't need to be, doesn't really add up at the end of the day for me to be out there just to meet people when we can do it online. There is obviously the learning curve of how does everyone go about on the whole Zoom meeting. There's a lot of either people have their mics on and you hear the background noise because they're in their office or at home. So just trying to get through the minor details is what I've seen kind of being the tough part about it. But at the end of the day, to be able to have these meetings, even with my superintendent, we can go through plans, don't have to be out on site, and we can discuss right there. He can control my screen, tell me what he's seeing, what I'm seeing, and so that's worked out awesome on our part.
Yeah, so and I appreciate that. Thank you, Nick. I want to kind of take the idea, because we did talk about the about meeting technology last time, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on that tonight. What I'm asking everyone to do is think beyond. I use the meeting technology and the applications as kind of a conversation starter. Is what else in your company could you revolutionize? Should you revolutionize, and to use this time to take your company to a different place? So forget about the online meetings thing. The mother of invention, right? And so we're at that place is because of this. How else should you be changing your companies? Forgetting about COVID, how else should you be using this opportunity to change your company in any area in your company that needs to be changed?
Kirk, this is John from Columbus.
Hi, John.
I think we're kind of maybe taking it as a little bit of a cleanse in a way. I mean, there are certain aspects of, we can kind of weed out maybe the lower producing employees and, filter in some of the higher producers, but also at the same time, change some of our SOPs to improve our efficiencies that way.
So, and I think that's a really good comment. I was at the real big time consumer today. I was at a board meeting with the company that I serve on the board in Michigan, and one of the things that the CEO of that company said during the board meeting was, it was amazing how when this is the CEO talking, it was amazing how when I sent out the message that this is how much we're going to cut overhead. It was amazing suddenly how each of the business unit leaders identified C players very quickly that we could make those kinds of changes. Now, so the reason I bring that up to follow up on John's comment is when we don't have these kinds of things, we tend often as leaders to rationalize that all of our players are A and B players. Yet in this time of COVID crisis, I think probably a lot of us have identified really C players that we didn't have that great a difficulty in to use John's comment, cleansing. Have others of you experienced that?
Yeah, we did the same thing pretty quickly. With Helix in California.
Yeah. So what kind of percentages were you talking about? Did you guys cleanse? We lost you.
We cut almost 40% right off the bat.
For office staff or field or both?
For field staff, and then we did have some reduction in office staff initially, and after about 3 weeks, we reduced once more, a smaller round, and then some other companies we cut hours to 32 a week for all office staff.
You see more coming?
We haven't been made aware of any more coming, and not anticipating at this time, but I'm not ruling that out of a possibility for us.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, thank you. Now, John, you said so cleansing, but you also said some SOPs. I don't want to talk about the SOPs that we've talked about as far as safety SOPs and those kinds of things. You were talking about changing SOPs, so that wouldn't be new. So let's not talk about safety SOPs at all tonight, unless someone's got something new that they think the rest of us don't know. What other kinds of SOPs have you attracted?
We started trying to put together a list of what we want to do and doing little teeny videos on the standard way of how we want to do installs so that the guys can, we use a platform called, well, it's by Facebook, it's Workplace,
Okay.
where we want to have that to where the guys can go in, hey, I've got an issue or a particular way of problem on the job, and start looking at the videos on how the company wants to do it instead of them trying to make their own decision out there.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So standardization of like installation processes. How many of those would you say you have online?
I think right now we've done one, and then the rest we're trying to identify the ones that we need to get out there sooner.
Good. So I like the idea of course, standardization for everything. So good. All right. What else? What other kinds of
Quick question here, Kirk.
Yeah, go ahead.
So to go on to Dave there, how's that working then? How are you communicating with your GCs on your part then?
The guy, I mean, we have an outside superintendent that runs around for the most part, but it gives the guys a place to go. We've already got them as they're going on jobs. We want before and after pictures, daily progress pictures and stuff. So it's just something else that they're doing. We're trying to go to where everything's being saved into one place on the workplace.
Okay. I guess for anybody else out there, how has it affected the communication from GC to sub or trade means?
It's like this is Dave again, down in Florida. I actually think it's increased the communication back and forth. I mean, everybody was doing emails to cover your butt, but it seems to be it's a more it's better emails. It's not just the issues. It's kind of to update everybody, to keep everybody on the same playing field on what's going on, because we're not having the job site meetings, so everybody's posting progress and stuff like that a little bit more.
And what about the rest of y'all? How are you using this as this opportunity as how are you using this as an opportunity to make your company better?
I think, Kirk, this is Tyler out here in Colorado. I one of the things that we kind of were forced to change was our electronic green cards, time cards for our service drivers. So, a lot of the guys, we had started to implement an electronic tablet, and we were trying it with one guy to get the process started. COVID, came and took place, and that forced us to purchase a bunch of tablets and just forced the guys immediately, almost overnight, to figure out the electronic, sending in electronic time cards, sending in electronic, T&M tickets, green sheets is what we call them, to get the billing, and the invoicing done. So actually our cash conversion cycle has improved quite a bit on our service side, just getting in our invoices much quicker.
Would you have done that? In this time frame before COVID, or do you think you did it quicker because of COVID?
Oh yeah, it was because of COVID that it essentially happened overnight. I mean, it was like one guy, and we were a little bit nervous about people's ability or skill level to learn or take on a new thing, and then it was just basically, you have to do it now and you have to learn it, and guys picked it up, and it was, I mean, within 7 days, within 1 week, we had pretty much all of our service guys caught up. They all had tablets. They were all sending everything in electronically. It's been going really smooth for, over a month now.
That's good. Nick, you have a hand raised. Go ahead.
So with the whole increase of, doing more web-based or internet access, how are you guys passing on the costs then to GCs, not knowing if you all provide job trailers specifically or not, but either way, I imagine most of you have company phones that data increase quite a bit on. So that'd be interesting to hear on my part.
Okay, so the question is, how are you passing on, the additional cost of technology to your customers? I have a guess on that for most people, but what are people's responses to that?
John from Columbus again. I would say the only thing that we can do is as we evaluate our overhead costs, that's where our job and labor bid rates will change as needed.
Yeah. Are there any other comments on that?
Yeah, Dave from Florida.
Yep.
We kind of actually eating the cost. We typically, every project we have safety and toll allowance that we put in. And we're kind of dipping into the toll allowance for some of the technology. But on all our larger jobs, we used to carry the fax machine. And when the fax machine went away, and that was with a telephone line running back, we kind of switched over to where we had hotspots so the guys could use the tablets anyhow. Now we're getting a little bit more to making sure that they have connectivity out there. So we're kind of figuring that we're going to make it back in the productivity. So we're not really passing anything along to the GCs.
Okay.
Dave, anytime you want to come to Wisconsin.
Well, I think it raises an interesting question, and just an interesting question, and that's going to lead us to a bigger discussion as well. Is about, and I forget who said it just a minute ago, but we really do need to evaluate all of these costs. Now, right now, obviously different people are doing it different ways. So Dave sees the trade-off in that increased productivity, so don't need to pass it on. Therefore, don't need to increase increase your price to the customer. I think all of those things we're just shaking out, though. Would you all agree with that?
Yeah, we're still learning.
We're still learning. In the board meeting I was in today, we had a small portion of the board meeting was about technology, and so we had some readings prior to the board meeting and looking at some data and things like that. And still, the construction industry only has an annual spend on technology of about 2 to 3%. Yet the rest of the industries that we participate with, we as contractors participate, their spend rate, what would you say what would your guess be on their spend rate? The spend rate of your end user customers, manufacturers, hospitality, healthcare, et cetera. What do you think their typical spend rate is on technology versus construction?
25%.
Yeah, it's a little bit high, but it's between 10 and just shy of 15% is your customers are spending on technology, and as an industry, we're spending 2 to 3% on technology. Now, I don't think that comes as a great surprise that construction is behind from a technology standpoint, and frankly, many of your companies are behind. I think we all know that, and that's a drum we've been beating for a long time. But maybe one of the outcomes of this COVID crisis is, in fact, that maybe we'll actually start to jumpstart the construction industry's spend on technology. What do y'all think about that? Do you think it could have that impact, or you're more skeptical than that?
I think it could, and really, I think it should. I mean, there's a lot of technology out there that could be used for construction to make everybody's day-to-day activities be more productive. And I don't know why we're not capitalizing on that, even as a GC or if I was a subcontractor of any sort.
Okay.
So this is Jeremiah from Iowa. We're working on a project right now where so basically BIM is not very apparent in Iowa right now. We work on it, and we, as a company, we deal with it, but it's tough to coordinate with other people, other contractors, when they're not using it. So what this GC is doing on this project is he's forcing everybody, and it's within the contract guidelines, that you have to use BIM and you have to coordinate. And so that's been extremely helpful.
Yeah, that's a good thing, right? Yeah. Now, here's a question for you: is how can you parlay that experience, Jeremiah, to other clients?
Just showing how much faster the project went together, how much cost savings, maybe in the end, we can look at cost savings on how everybody coordinating actually created a better environment for everybody. We didn't have to think on the spot, less RFIs. We can show that we had much less RFIs than we would have if we were on a typical project. Just different things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, good. Great. Thank you, everyone. Now I have, we're going to do this live. And so now I want everybody to, you can obviously do it electronically or just do it on a piece of scratch paper, a note card that you've got next to you. You're in charge now. You're in your company, and some of you are owners and some of you are not. You're in charge of your company, and we're going to have a special board meeting next Thursday. Let's just say we're going to have a special board meeting next Thursday. I want you to take a minute, and I want you to create the agenda for that meeting for your company. So that's the topic. The idea is there's a special board meeting next week, and even if you don't have a board, let's assume you do. I want you to go ahead and create the agenda for the special board meeting. So I'll give you 3 or 4 minutes to do that. Another 90 seconds. All right, so that's all the time I'm going to give you. So we're just going to do a stream of consciousness, and so I just want you to. I'm going to write these down, but I want you to just speak slowly enough so I can get them. But give me your agenda, Justin. I see you up there. So what'd you write down, Justin?
All right, I wrote down that I would direct our staff to engage some of our providers in training. You know, we've not cut anyone, and although our call count's been down and so there's some training opportunities through our software provider that we've not utilized. And I want them to gain there's a lot of ground to be taken, I think, in efficiencies in purchasing and using technology better to prevent, lost time. I went back and reviewed the lost time analysis from last week with a few of our staff already.
Uh-huh.
And looking at, the lost time of material acquisition, as well as the points of contact, that ties to this whole event. But it really does, there's a lot of opportunities to take ground, I think, in profitability in a slowdown, is what I would try to drive and work on those SOPs as far as making certain some of those things get tied back to the proper jobs. The other thing I think is just not to berate the guy. We've been doing electronic time card entry, and it even with just like time cards, getting it in timely. I think just giving guys words of encouragement when they do get their time card turned in before noon on the following day with all the proper cost codes allocated, trying to give them opportunities to take a moment and to do that. Then the last thing would be just, to look for opportunities. We can self-perform some site excavation. Some of that's low-hanging fruit for opportunities with customers that we do a lot of work with that we've kind of left on the table in the past, and to look at our project managers and say, look, is this project scaled size wise that we could maybe expand our scope of work on this one site without looking for other opportunities elsewhere. So
okay, all right, good, thank you. All right, so let's so I'll try it without calling on people. But what else did y'all put on your agenda for the special board meeting you're going to have next week?
Hey, Kirk, this is Nick from Ohio. I think the first topic I would want to reach out for my board of advisors, the group that I trust and I look to for some support through this time would be, number one would be the morale, right? So how's the morale in the organization? What are we doing to keep the personnel knowing that we're all together, we're all going through this together. What are we doing? What can we be doing to try to really reach all the heartbeats within the organization? Everybody has families. That's number one for me.
Okay.
Number two is the issues and concerns. So the major, the project delays, working through the approach in regards to each individual opportunity and the impact that it's left on the organization. Number three would be, identification of what have we noticed through this time, reviewing the issues, concerns that we need to implement today. And then within the next, week, 2 weeks, 30 days, 60 days, et cetera. Number four would then be reviewing the current financial state of the organization, looking at FTE, current revenue on booked, and the gaps within the organization, to identify where we have opportunities that we need to pursue to fill those gaps to keep everybody moving. Number five would be what type of future markets outside of our everyday realm that we've done historically that would be available. Run that by them, get their buy-in, their support, their guidance there as well. Recruitment would definitely be a topic. There's going to be a turning point here. So at what point when things start to move back, we don't want to be behind the curve to where we're losing the opportunity to grab some extremely talented individuals. That 30 days ago everybody was searching for, and now they're available, and are we moving for it? So that's some of the outline that how I would base the conversation on.
Good. I think all of those are important. So morale, issues and concerns, things like project delays and things like that. Identify what needs to be done 30, 60, 90, 120 days, financial state of the organization, future markets, and recruitment. I think that's those are good agendas. Good. What else? And we're going to circle back and talk about various of those. What else did y'all write down? And we have
John from Ohio.
Hi, John.
I had pretty much Nick and Justin hit just about everything. The only two that I had that were a little bit different was quality control reports from our field and customer surveys as far as customer satisfaction surveys.
Okay. And how often do you do customer sat surveys?
Upon completion of every project.
Okay.
But, it's something that we tend to get a little bit more laxed in when times are busier. So, but it is definitely something that we need for feedback purposes and improvement.
Okay. All right, good. What else? Anybody else? Got a board meeting next week. Go ahead.
Hey, Kirk, Brad with MSD. So one of the other things I would be bouncing off Nick and I's advisors is kind of the risk analysis of purchasing additional real estate. Right now, I can't think of a better time to where the economy is and how much commercial real estate might be down now. Now is a perfect opportunity, I would think, and I'd be asking our advisors that, to the point to where how much more value is it if you can tell your end user that you can build a lot more of their building with inside your shop than theirs. So I think this is, this class is, survive and thrive. And I think that would be a key point that if you're prefabbing, maybe it's time to do a lot more, capitalize on that. If you're not prefabbing, then maybe it's time to start thinking about it.
For sure. All right, good. So let's pick at some of those. And so how do you all know how you're doing? So clearly everyone has things that they do, but it's still, I'm constantly amazed in our industry how it doesn't appear that people really do a good job of keeping their finger on the pulse of how they're doing. And so right now, how do you know how you're doing?
The numbers.
Okay, so can you be more vague? I'm kidding.
Well, there's a lot of them, but certainly your call count if you're running a service organization, you're looking at call count, closing ratios on a weekly or daily basis. We've seen this past week, an uptick in call count. And we've also, where on the financials, you can never, let your guard down on that. You can't go by your gut. You got to look at the true numbers of what are our actual margins and what our sales is and how many billable hours are we getting out the door.
Yeah.
So those are the things that that's the pulse for me, as well as some other things. But
I like your response, Justin. So how would you characterize? So just take Justin right now. How would you characterize what you're looking at relative to what kind of leading indicators and what kind of lagging indicators, right? So you actually just mentioned I wrote down 5 or 6 of them, and some of them are leading indicators and some of them are lagging indicators. But first, what's leading indicators and what's lagging indicators? What does that mean?
Backlog would be leading.
Okay, why?
Well, because it's showing what's out there in the future. That, we've watched our backlog shrink over the last 6 weeks significantly.
Yeah.
And where this is the first week we've initiated new contracts in 6 weeks. Everything else everybody was puckered up, as I say.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So I'd like to hear some responses from others. And it's okay to say, don't really think about it this way too much as far as leading indicators or lagging indicators. What does that mean to the rest of y'all? Why do you think I'm asking the question?
the lead would kind of be your end goal, and then your lags are your measures that are, affecting directly producing that output. So we're hurting on productivity right now, then, I guess one of your lag measures could be, how are you reducing those inefficiencies right now? That would be how I would interpret it, or the question maybe.
I think in the kind of the big picture, in a generic way of looking at it, I think that's probably true. But so, for example, when Justin was talking, call counts, closing ratios, those number of estimates in the queue, number of proposals that you get out, those are all leading indicators, right? And then lagging indicators are the things that we typically are looking at on our financial reports, like margins and net profit and those kinds of things. And so, a rhetorical question I want to put out there for everyone to think about as we move forward is, and actually write it down, this should be an action item, is what are the indicators that we look at that are leading, and what are the indicators that are looking at lagging? And the reason I'm asking that question is that we tend to be an industry that looks at lagging indicators instead of leading indicators. And as we're moving through this crisis, I think it makes a lot of sense to actually look at both of them, and maybe make sure that you have enough emphasis on leading indicators, because of course leading indicators is what's telling us what's coming down the pike instead of what we've actually seen, right? So when you look at your job cost report or your income statement, those are for the most part historical, right? And so they're definitely lagging. Okay, so this board meeting, tell me how you know right this second how you're doing at this point in time, in week 5 or 6 or 8 or whatever this is of the COVID crisis. Tell me how you know how you're doing, or do you know how you're doing? How many of you feel rock solid that you know exactly where you're at right now?
This is Dan from Boston.
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, I don't feel rock solid, or I don't think anybody really should, but I mean, because there is still a lot of unknowns and uncertainty and what's going to happen or going forward. But I mean, as an indicator for us, I feel it's the amount of work or prospects that are coming through, like I do on the service side, like Justin was saying, I see a lot more bid requests, smaller things coming in, just in people's in that we talk to, and they're getting used to working from home. I feel that some people are getting a little bit more comfortable. General contractors, customers, they're starting to open up more in the past 4 weeks that I've noticed. So that's my experience.
Okay, so those are back to the indicators. I'm going to move it away a little bit to tell me how. Let's say I came in and I'm going to look at your company and look at the financials of your company and make an evaluation. How do you think, all of you, how do you think I would do that? What would be the first thing I would do?
I think you would ask to look for all our KPIs.
Okay.
Those for revenue, profit, all employees, field employees.
Okay. I like the way you're thinking. And so, do you have a list? Was that Dan or Brad? Who was that?
Brad, MSD.
So Brad, do you have a list of those KPIs, or do you have a spreadsheet that you could pull up that you could show us of your KPIs?
I can't pull it up, but I can definitely share it and put it in Dropbox probably tomorrow. So what we do, I won't say that, Kirk, that we know where we are at this hour, but we're I feel that we're on top of it pretty well, not perfect, but so we use Power BI that connects with our software, our accounting software. So we know FTE per all employees, per field employees, both revenue, net profit, gross profit, and that's what we've built in the last year or so and that's what we manage with our numbers. And just for the group, I mean, for our experience, the first week that this came out, there was a slight decrease, and then as far as productivity levels and all the other KPIs that we use, and then week 2, week 3, week 4, like took a major dive. As far as week 5, it slightly kind of plateaued, and then 6, it started showing slightly up. I mean, so that's what we've witnessed.
Well, slightly up. So I like your answer a lot. So let's talk about the productivity levels for a second. So you tracked that, and so tell us all more about how you are tracking that. Yeah, that's where it'd be so useful to have something on the screen. So tell us more about the process, the formula. So, and then I want to get back to the trend that you've talked about. So first, go ahead.
So as far as field productivity, it's material per foot.
Okay, right, good. And so that's the definition of productivity is quantity of material installed over time, right?
Yep.
All right. And so walk us through the progression again over the last, I guess you said the last 6 weeks. And so can you walk us through the progression of approximately what happened to your productivity?
Yeah, I mean, basically productivity went down probably 12% the first week. Then it went to like 25 the second week. The third week it went to 40. Fourth week it was like 49. And then that's where it kind of plateaued, and then it come up to 40% and then up to 29. So it's kind of it's almost like everyone's getting used to the new normal type of thing.
Okay. All right, good. So that's actually helpful. So you had this curve, 12, 25, 40, 49, 40, 29. So you're back up, but you're back up to still having less productivity than we had pre-COVID, right?
That's correct.
For sure. So it's still really early in the experiment. Are you guys forecasting where you think it's going to settle in at?
Yeah, and this goes back. I wanted to jump in on that. The question that the road we were going down before was what things might this change moving forward is one things that we felt that we kind of did well was revenue projections, cash flow projections, but pre-COVID-19. But now that we are in pre-COVID-19, we're doing 5, 6, 7 different projections of all, and we're kind of looking at it now like, why the hell weren't we doing this before? Because the risk was still there. Yeah. So I think moving forward, we're going to constantly look at multiple projections and not just the one that we think actually will happen.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And that's stress testing, right? And so that's that's at the bank, when we're required by law to do stress testing. And so I like the comment you just made is that, why we've discovered why weren't we doing this more before, and you could see in the future you doing this a lot more regularly. Well, now, in fact, making it part of your process. Yes, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, and I think with this COVID-19, it's really gonna. I mean, just a general comment. It's really gonna kick. I think, in my opinion, that it's really gonna kick construction into a completely new era. We've noticed this technology, at least I have, in the last 5, 6 years, really take a big, vast jump. And, there's a lot of smart investors, a lot of smart people out there on technology. And I think they're going to be looking at, well, how can we make construction catch up to, the car industry and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people are going to capitalize this. And I think it's really going to push us into the next, technology era.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important comment, and that's where we got to today in the FZ board meeting as well. Is that, and the phrase that we came up with and we were talking about is that we need, as a company, all companies, we need a single version of the truth. And what I mean by that is all of us in our companies have all kinds of data, But typically, we haven't done such a good job on data integration, right? Is that, and the software industry has tried to do data integration forever, way back Timberline to saying that Timberline can do everything. And we've got contemporary discussions of that as well. Trimble buys up everybody. But this whole idea of a single version of the truth is really about leapfrogging our systems to where we truly do have integrated systems. And I think you're right. Now, the question is how are we going to get there, right? So any thoughts on that? Do you think contractors are going to drive that? Is your company going to drive this with your software providers? Is there going to be a unicorn that comes along and presents a solution for us? How's this going to happen?
I mean, in my opinion, I think it's going to be a mix of a lot of things. I think a lot of it will start to be forced with what's going on here. As far as you got companies out there who either one have never heard of a Trimble or don't have one. We have a couple of them. I think you're going to start to see more jobs that it's a requirement. It's no longer if you want to use it for your benefit or not. And I'm just using Trimble as an example. I think we're going to see a lot more happen a lot faster, and it's going to be mandatory. And I think end users / general contractors are going to start forcing it more because, hey, the more that can be done from your shop and your office, the more you mitigate the risk for the end user. That's kind of what I'm seeing down the road.
Yeah, Trimble was probably a bad example of me. But I was speaking of Trimble, I was thinking really, because Trimble has seen themselves as has really become a software aggregator, right?
Right.
And so, they bought Accubid and those kinds of things. And so it's this whole idea of a software aggregator really coming in and helping us as an industry to get to this quote single version of the truth.
I think, Kirk,
yeah.
As a GC, you're going to see a lot of us really looking into what subcontractors can provide for the technology and how they can streamline things. And that's going to almost be, I think, a large driving factor of who gets decided on a job.
I actually like you saying that. Now, I have a question, and it's not meant as a funny question, is this, so who's going to put, so I think what I heard you say is that GCs are going to be looking for subcontractors who are doing a better job of this, or, I don't want to offend GCs, and I know we joke around a lot about that. So are GCs going to be the solution, or are subs going to be the solution, or is there going to be some sort of hard to imagine collaboration where we all figure out that we've got to all figure this out? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Brad kind of hit it on the head there, that it's going to be a collaboration. I think you're going to see some GCs that are pushing it more than others, that's saying that this is how it's going to be. If you don't have the technology to handle it, then we're not even going to send you a bid. But then you're going to have the GCs that are looking at Brad that, oh, well, you got that technology, and we did umpteen projects before. That worked out great, and it comes down to apples, and might probably give Brad the benefit of the doubt because he has the technology and everything went smooth and we ended up ahead of schedule. I think that's where you're going to see it. So if there's that huge collaboration of, the GC and the sub working together, obviously that benefits everybody.
Yeah. So I think what I hear you saying is that there's going to be a market advantage, right? There's going to be a market advantage for those of us who are able to get to this technological single version of the truth or single version of execution at the job on the job site. And I think that seems logical and right.
So I would add one thing with that, Kirk, that ultimately, no pun intended, Nick, but it'll be the mechanical contractors that educate the general contractor on that technology ultimately.
Shit,
And
we're
then
gonna
once
have to talk a lot slower then.
what's that?
Said, shit, we're gonna have to talk a lot slower then.
Well, ultimately, I think that's what it'll be. And the mechanical contractors who are kind of behind the times and not on it, then I think the general contractor, once they see the value in it, they're going to start making it mandatory for their jobs.
Yeah, and I hope that that's true. I guess for me, I absolutely hope that that's true. But this is a drum I've been beating for 20 years, at least 20 years. And I guess I'm a little bit skeptical because I think in so many respects, everyone's just waiting for everyone else or someone else to do this, right? So the software integrators try to do it and do a poor job on it because they're not contractors. The contractors are reluctant to embrace it because they don't know enough about the technology, and they're somewhat stingy and wanting to spend the money. And so is what I'm hearing that we actually believe that somehow this COVID crisis is going to kick the industry in the butt, and this is actually going to be accomplished, or is this really just rainbows and unicorns?
I think there's a chance with the new norms when we do finally return to work that the distancing and things are going to be encouraged. Ramped up to a point where the prefab aspect of everyone's job becomes more important. I think forcing that could potentially force us all into doing more BIM, and because we do have to collaborate from afar and things are being built further apart. So I hope that could be a bit for this.
Okay. All right. And so again, some of the things we're forced to do can lead us into more prefab and modularization and those kinds of things. Okay. What about the rest of y'all as far as my question about is this all just happy talk that we're going to really move up that technology curve? We've been talking about it for decades and we're not getting there. What makes us think that this is going to be the big impetus for change relative technology?
Kirk, I'll say this is Nick from MSD. So Nick from Wisconsin, Brad from MSD, Jacob, you guys are spot on, right? So the reality is everybody is running on different versions in the coordination aspect, right? You got some people out still. We have electrical contractors that are still doing 2D that we're currently seeing on our project sites. So the versions are with Revit, you got 17 version out, 18, 19, 20 is now out. So we have all capabilities, and it's very difficult from a timing when that's not on a plan spec avenue, and that's not in the specs on the front end. So you got multiple people running at different versions. There's still delays there. The Trimble's a no-brainer. But we got to do a better job as a construction industry, and Kirk hits on this all the time. We lag in time. We're so slow to market what we do. The people on this call do amazing things every single day. Our team members are just, the capabilities are through the roof, but we don't market it. We don't put it in our proposals. On design build, that's easy. I can go and I can put all that in their proposal. I can even have some visual pieces to be tagged along with that so that the owner sees the true cost savings of having everybody on board. I do think I'm a huge fan of IPD, integrated project delivery, the design build, the design assist. When they bring an engineer in and we're there providing engineering assistance and we're developing the documents with the owner, keeping the cost index with where they went to get financing for that project, they capitalize on that financing. Everybody's working together the whole time. Coordination is proceeding as we're releasing different CLINs, as we're working through this process, and that's going automated right to the fabrication shop. There's technologies out there now that will grab the Revit and kick it. I want to throw another curveball though. What about your estimation groups? So, we all sign as mechanical contractors, we sign the clause to get the files released from the engineer record, right? If it's not in-house completely with design build, we have to release it from the engineer. We got to sign our life away and they kick it to us, pay a fee, etc. So when we get that file, now there's estimation software out there that goes right into coordination and will actually strip your pipe, valves, fittings, electrical conduit down to the foot. Now you're just adding labor, loading your subs, and you can complete your estimate, and you're right into, it's already, you're able to just tweak it now. You're not having to move major things, and then you kick it right into fab. So I think those are the topics that where we can see a true impact.
Yeah, I'll second all of that, right? So, every bit of that. And those are the drums that I beat. And so, part of I think the moral to the story, and I think this is a big if, is whether or not we can collaborate as an industry to actually all be marketing this, and whether or not we can and actually get that critical mass. I don't know. I'm not sure. Everything Nick just articulated is I agree 100%. But that depends on that is dependent upon us being good marketers and collaborating, and at every step along the way, not letting other people play. And I mean that intentionally. So, for example, back to Nick GC, right? Is Nick, are you willing to refuse to let subcontractors play who aren't up to speed from a technological standpoint, or will you accept people who are playing at a different level?
I guess it's kind of a mixed bag on my part. Hard bid. If it's a competitive bid, I'm probably, if I really need the job and want to go after it hard, if Jeremiah's technology is a little bit lax a days ago compared to Nick's, but his price is better, I'm probably going to take Jeremiah and go with it. Design build, then I'm probably, Jeremiah has no even contest, and I'm going straight to Nick and be like, all right, Nick, here's what we're going to do. We're going to sell this. The owner's going to love it. We're going to go from there. I mean, that's the way I see it. It gets that tricky part there.
Well, and so I appreciate the answer, but I'll make this statement is like, well, that's where we were before COVID, right? I mean, that's so that really means nothing's changed,
right?
So the question is how do we get the change on the hard money bids? Because what I'm always selling to customers and to plan and spec customers, and especially end user customers, is no. This that plan and spec model that you just described is broken, and it always has been broken.
Yeah, I agree.
Because in the long run, it ends up costing you more money anyway.
Right.
So this is Jeremiah again. That's kind of what I was getting to with my earlier statement. It was in the plan and spec to have coordination drawings and all of that already implemented into our project costs. So when we were going through everything, that was taken into consideration, and that's how they also ultimately chose their contractors, knowing who had the capabilities of doing this. And it also, it helped everybody that was bidding on it in the long run, because there were only a few players in the game at that point. So it was a good thing that the school that we're doing it for, they saw the benefit of it right off the bat. And the architects and engineers, they were 100% on board with it, putting it in their spec to include it. So that's
so I think you're right. I think that is where we need to get to, is we've got to get the contemporary technological processes written into the spec, right? And I think all of us have a duty to do a better job of doing that. I mean, the exemplars in our industry have been the major equipment manufacturers and, frankly, the controls contractors, who have been exceptional at getting the way they want to do business written into the spec. And we haven't been particularly good about that as an industry. So how, as an industry, not just as a company, how as an industry do we get better at that?
I think, as a GC, we need to take to heart more the comments that are coming from subcontractors and start pushing that onto the design team to push onto the owners to where they realize that this is valid. It's going to give them a better product at the end of the day. You don't have to worry about 15 million change orders. Makes my job a hell of a lot easier. And I would assume it's going to make anybody that's working underneath me on a project, their job, daily task, a hell of a lot easier as well.
Okay. Any other thoughts or ideas on this? All right. I want to circle back to I think Brad was talking about it, and so he gave the 6-week example: 12, 25, 40, 49, 40, 29. And so it's come back up now to about 29% losses in productivity. We did the spreadsheet last week. Everyone went away with that spreadsheet. Some of you did some things with it. Some of you maybe didn't do some things with it. I want to hear from multiple people, as many as I can, of where you think now as a percentage you're settling in at as far as lost productivity because of COVID protocols and morale and all those kinds of things. And so where do you think you are as far as the percentage of productivity that you're down? So I'm going to do this. So I don't usually do this, but I am going to do this. And so I'm actually going to poll the audience here. Justin, do you have any thoughts on where you're at right now as far as percentage of productivity you're down?
Yeah, I do. Ours is a little unique because we implemented a performance-based pay, not just for our service technicians, but all of our new construction field personnel. And we started that in 2009, actually, as a life jacket, I guess, to get us through that recession. Yeah. And we've modified it, but at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you 15%.
Okay. All right, good. So, and not good. I mean, it's bad. We're losing productivity, but and so I'm going to do kind of a speed round. So Terry, first of all, hi, Terry. How you doing? Terry, I know Terry's
well. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, man. Hey, so if you're just going to swag it, how much is your production down?
I would say 10 to 15%. We had PM meetings today, and there's certain aspects that production's down. One project in particular is very tight side, and production's down there, and I guarantee that's a multiple of things. But I would say that 10 to 15%.
Okay, good. Tyler, what about you?
Yeah, actually, I was just gonna run the numbers when we're talking here, but I'm gonna put us right in that same ballpark there, probably 12 to 15%. But I'm gonna run our numbers real quick and let you know here in a second.
All right, good. I'm gonna keep going. Jeremiah, where are you guys at?
I think we're close to around 8%, 8 to 10%. Again, we're in Iowa. We're pretty rural. We don't have too much going on around here. It's more people stopping and talking about it.
Okay. Nick Davis, what about you guys?
Well, just averaging out with our construction ops manager, just lead it to, that's 32.5%.
32.5. Okay. So you kind of average that out. All right. So you've got Brad's and all right. All right, good. What about Jacob, what about you guys? Are you tracking this and for the jobs that you have going, the essential jobs you have going?
We are. I'm not on those projects, so I'm not exactly sure what those numbers look like. And my projects personally are all shut down. But I used that spreadsheet and I got, at my best case, roughly 35%. Worst case, 45. So I'm hoping it's slightly better than that, but that was my forecast for it.
Okay. Chris A., where are you guys at? What are you projecting as far as losses in productivity?
So I would guess, I don't really know where our exact, without pulling up all our sheets and everything, but I would make an educated guess and say around probably close to 30 to 40 to be honest. I mean, we had to shut a lot of sites down working with really ragtag skeleton crews right now. So we're I wouldn't say we're necessarily hurting, very bad in the red or anything, but it's definitely a struggle right now.
Okay. All right. Thanks. What about Chris Carter? Where are you guys at?
I think right now we're at about 25%, but at where we're at in our labor curve, as we ramp that resource up, I think we're going to go up to 40 to 50%.
Okay. All right. I'll only do one or two more. Cody, what about you? I'm not hearing Cody. I'll go back to DeLuca. Okay, I see Ken Radford says 8 to 10%. What about what did I bet you with Dan?
Hello. Can you guys hear me? Mike,
yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Hey, sorry about that. I had some mic issue there. I'm doing a job right now actually in Oklahoma City. 10%, kind of in the same boat as Jeremiah, very rural.
Yeah.
Working with a really smaller skeleton crew, really doing off-ended hours though. That does help.
Yeah. All right, good. All right, so, and I appreciate everybody's feedback. Thank you very much for that. That's useful. So we're all hearing and seeing the same thing, and so I think the lowest I heard was 8 to 10%, and then and on the high end, into 30, 40s, or even 50s, and so one, I think it's incumbent on everybody to get the real numbers. Now, of course, I don't want to say it's a moving target. I hate that phrase, even though I used it. But what's the biggest reason that we've got to identify what the number is? Actually, there's two big reasons why we have to identify what that number is. What are the two big reasons why we have to identify it?
Here's Cody here. I don't know if anyone else unmuted.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd probably say just from just sticking with the timelines. I mean, from a GC perspective, when you're dealing with clients, maintaining productivity and sticking with a solid timeline is pretty much half the time really all the investors really care about sometimes.
Okay. And so all right. So schedule. All right. So satisfying the customer schedule. It's interesting. And I'm glad you said that because you're right. It's about managing customers' expectations. That wasn't one of the top two reasons that I picked. I think it's a good one. I think it's really important. Why do we have to? We got to figure this number out. We got to figure it out fast. Why?
Right. Kirk, so I mean, identifying these inefficiencies is the only way to go about making sure that we are focusing on trying to make these things better.
All right, so focusing on improvement for sure. Okay, absolutely, I agree with that. That's good. I'm glad I'm hearing these answers because yes, absolutely, we have to improve them. But like we talked about last week, there's a certain level we're not going to get back to because we have these new procedures and protocols.
Yeah, Kirk, this is Nick from MSD. The big thing, we're evaluating these on a daily basis as we're continuing to pursue work. So from the pre-con side, I think it's extremely important for every organization to understand what these are and even add a little bit of percentage in there just to make sure that you're protected before you go and produce any bids. Dustin, you're spot on. Our reality is we have work under contract. It's being executed. Challenges are real. And we need to capitalize on where we can improve and what we can control. To try to keep our current backlog, in the midst of where it was intended to be.
Yeah, So you hit on both of the ones that are at the top of the hit parade for me is twofold. One is our accurate forecasting of where we're going to end up this year. That's absolutely critical, and then the second part is. All of this needs to be estimating right now. At the board meeting I was at today, there's for this company there's essentially a president of construction and a president of industrial technology, and then the CEO and of course the CFO and of course everybody below them. And so we started off looking at the Q1 performance. Actually, we started off. This was there's 4 board meetings, 4 major themes for the board meetings throughout the course of the year, and this was the board meeting that focused on. We talk about finance every board meeting, but this is the annual financial checkup, and part of the reason we do the annual financial checkup at this meeting is that we have the audited financial statements at this time, and so this was the meeting where we had the audit report from the outside auditors. So we had all of 2019 numbers and the audit report from that, certified audit report from that. And so obviously that led to lots and lots of conversations. But then that led into Q1 results. And then later on in the meeting, of course, we talked about the projections for through the end of the year. And frankly, the Q1 results were significantly below the Q1 plan. And as you can imagine, that would lead to lots of conversations. Now, as an example with this company, the revenue numbers, and so I'm talking about the electrical construction, this electrical contractor, I'm talking about the electrical construction side of things. So their revenue numbers for Q1 were within 0.6%, right? And so the revenue numbers were very close to what the revenue plan was for Q1, which is good, but the profit numbers were significantly off. Now, of course, upon questioning the president for construction, what do you think his comments were about why the profit was significantly off? So the revenue is fine, but the profit was significantly off. What do you think his response was to that?
Did they not change the bids to factor that labor inefficiency now?
Well, but for Q1 though, it's too soon for that, right? So Q1, January, February, March, right? And so, well, I'll ask all of you. Well, actually, I'll just say this instead of asking you, folks. Your Q1 numbers really only will have been marginally affected for most of you by anything COVID. When are we going to see the COVID results for most of your companies? When are we going to be seeing the real impacts of all of this?
6 months down the road.
Oh, hell yes. I mean, this is, hold on to your hats for Q2, Q3, and Q4 numbers, right? And Ken just posted too, is like, I think probably the biggest outfall that we'll see when we really know the impacts of all of this is, Q3, end of Q2 and Q3 and Q4. And so what was happening in the board meeting is the group president was really kind of blowing smoke up our ass. Sorry about that. Was blowing smoke up our rear end about Q1 results being down because of COVID, and the numbers just don't bear that out. So if the numbers don't bear that out, what does that mean? All right. So forget about COVID right now. All right. So in analyzing analyzing your company's numbers, typically, what do we tend to blame poor results on as an industry? Well, there's your answer. If we don't have an answer to that, we're screwed. As an industry, typically, what do we tend to blame bad results on?
The market or the economy.
Yeah, I mean, it's the market, it's the economy, it's the field guys. The field guys are going to blame it on the estimators not putting enough money in the job. The project managers are going to blame it on the foreman and the field crews not executing properly. So we get all the same BS that we've always had in our industry, and there was a fair amount of that going on today in this meeting. And this is a good company, right? So don't take it wrong, but it was really a collection of all of the usual victims, right? And so I heard a fair amount of that. And then, of course, one of the major criticisms in our industry, rightfully so. And those of you who have heard me talk before at length know that there's two reasons I have for firing, primary reasons I have for firing a project manager. And the first one for firing anybody in the company is if you don't support the craftsman in the field. And I think that's, well, I don't think that the reason for that is because that's violating commandment number one, which is support the craftsman in the field. And the second reason that I'll have for firing a project manager is because of my inability to teach them how to accurately forecast cost on jobs, period. And we still suck at that as an industry. There's no doubt about that. And we have to get better at this. And I'm hoping that maybe one of the things that this COVID crisis will do is, as an industry, is to kick us all in the butt to say, we have to get better at doing this, at making projections. And so I heard all of the usual excuses at this board meeting today about why their profits were less than they should be. And this is a company that does a good job with KPIs. Yet I'm still hearing the same excuses. And so, as it turns out, their revenue for Q1 was almost exactly what the revenue that was planned to be. But their direct costs, their direct job costs, were up by 4.1%. All right. So, and so we had all of that data. And so all the board members had all that data. And of course, all the company people had that data. And so it was clear that direct job costs were up by 4.1%. And then I asked the CEO and all of the business unit leaders and things like that, what they were doing about that. Okay, so the observation is your direct costs are up by 4.1%. What do you think their answer was across the board, or what kind of answers do you think that I heard when I pointed out that, yes, your direct costs are up by 4%? What do you think the answers were? Give me some examples.
Increased wages.
They did that. I think that's a legitimate answer, Terry. Is that if your wages have gone up? So, for example, if you're working a lot of overtime or paying swing shift wages or doing more prevailing wage jobs or things like that, then for sure that would be a reason why your direct costs were up. Now, my question, and so that's a good answer. My question would be, well, you should have anticipated that, right? And that should have been baked in, unless it was COVID specific increased cost. But that wasn't their answer. And of course, then I asked them, of course, what action have you taken? What kind of actions do you think, you've already heard me say this in this class, and so what kind of actions do you know this company has already taken?
I know you mentioned they've cut the overhead costs.
Yeah, so they absolutely struck early, and they reduced overhead significantly, rapidly. They imposed salary cuts to the inside people, not to the outside people. So they were all over that, and they were rightfully proud of that. Yet that still didn't satisfy me. Why do you think that didn't satisfy me?
Because we're talking about direct cost. Direct cost is up, so.
Yeah, we're talking about freaking direct costs, and their answers to me are about indirect cost, right? And here's all the beautiful, magical, wonderful things we're doing to control our costs. And so I left that meeting 100% convinced of what?
They weren't keeping a good pulse on their field production and the increased costs associated with the messaging and the morale out actually on the sites.
Yeah, this is a really important comment, Nick, and it goes back to, I like the list that you put off on morale, issues of concerns, ideas, and this is a company that has a really strong positive culture. So, folks, they're not seeing the numbers. They're not seeing what the numbers are telling them. And if during Q1 your productivity is off, So in other words, your direct costs are up, right? Because it shouldn't be materials or equipment costs. And you're not seeing it in Q1, you're a freaking dead man in Q2, 3, and 4. Do you all agree with that, or you disagree with that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If this is, we're talking about quarter one,
yeah,
we haven't even seen quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, so that impact's going to quadruple.
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. And this is what terrifies me as a board member, and this is, of course, what I was articulating. Because so then my next question to the president of the construction was, his name's Kevin. I said, Kevin, have you stopped estimating work and stopped putting proposals out? Why did I ask him that question? His answer, of course, was no. Why do you think I asked him that question?
Because they don't know the true loss in production currently with their current state. So therefore, if you're bidding jobs, you're going to be bidding it the same way you were bidding it before, which is going to be, you're going to see that further out than 6 months.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly right. Is that you're building a death trap for yourself. And so his answer was, and then other people in the meeting said, no, we haven't gotten to that. It's like, folks, and this is back to y'all now, stop it. If I just polled the audience and I got responses from, I don't know, 6 people or so, roughly 6 people or so. And the ranges of lost field productivity went from, like I said, 8 to 40. Let's just say 8 to 40, probably settling in somewhere there. I think the 10s and 15s are still probably a little bit low, but let's just say it's 20%. If you haven't right now gone and changed your estimates to factor in this level of field level productivity losses, you need to stop putting numbers out because you're committing suicide. Now let's have a conversation about that. Do you agree with that or disagree with that as a group?
I agree with you. Up here, I mean, we are to the point where we got more work, it seems like, that's coming out of our ears, and we're getting more bids coming in to where I'm thinking about that. I just need to start increasing my labor wages for our carpenters. And if we get it, that's great. But at the end of the day, I mean.
But you said wages though, Nick. So this isn't about wages though, is it?
No. I mean, in our estimate. So if we charge $10 an hour for a carpenter, normally, but we have so much work right now. Am I looking now to go to $20 an hour? And if we get the project, that's great. Or
yeah, but that worries me because it's not about rate. It's not about rate. It's about productivity, which I think is far more serious. So I'll ask, and I only want people to tell the truth. So I'll ask the question this way: how many of you, or which of you, have gone into estimating and talked with everyone at estimating, changed your estimating SOP and said, we are going to apply a factor of X to our field labor productivity because of the new safety protocols and loss of morale, et cetera. How many of you have done that? And how many of you have not done that? And why for both sets? All right, so Ken says yes, but not accepted. Tell me more about that, Ken. So you've done that, so not accepted. What does that look like? What does that mean? Pushback from the estimators, or Ken's chatting, and so I'm reading his chat. Pushback from the estimators, or from ownership group, or pushback from who? Or yes, all of the above. Okay, so we're going to get pushback, but what's the purpose of estimating? And many of you have heard me make this statement. What's the purpose of estimating?
Identify your costs.
Yeah, there's only one purpose for estimating, and that is to identify your true cost. So is anybody out here, anybody on this call other than Ken, willing to admit that, and I'm not talking about raising your prices, because raising your prices starts to sound like it's a marketing game or that kind of thing. This is an estimating question. If you are seeing, and you are, if you're seeing losses in field labor productivity, the only rational decision is to go and change your cost basis for your field labor productivity. That is the only rational decision. So if you have not done that, why? And I know most of you have not done that. So tell me why.
I'm not 100% sure what some people above me have figured out on that, but I think they're still trying to nail down, what is that factor right now. So I think that's part of the reason we haven't changed it.
Okay.
It's just not knowing.
All right, and that's a good answer, Jacob, because I heard that exact answer today at the board meeting. Is like, well, we haven't figured it out yet. We're trying to sort it all out. And that was when I asked him the very pointed question, well, are you still bidding work? And of course, his answer, and all of your company's answer, is yes. And then my question with a dog whistle cock of my head is, what the hell is wrong with you? How can anybody be putting out pricing when you know that your labor cannot achieve what your typical labor could achieve? And I mean this in all seriousness. And so I really like to have a discussion about this to know what's going on in your heads and in your companies that you haven't already flipped a switch.
It's John in Columbus. I'd say probably just more the fear of missing out on work that's potentially out there and that it might dry up too quickly.
Yeah. All right, and I think that's the perfect and most honest answer. Fear on missing out on work, and I agree with you. I agree with you 100% that is in fact. I know that's why people aren't doing it. Which means what? Somebody give me the logical business conclusion to acting out of fear for that reason.
Somebody's going to lose money.
No. Yes. You're going to go out of business. Does anybody believe that that's where we are? Or if you don't believe that, tell me why not. With an industry average net profit of 3% from new construction, we're not talking service work here. With an industry average of 3% net profit, if you're missing labor productivity by as little as 10% to as much as 40%, somebody needs to explain to me. I think John gave me the right answer, gave all of us the right answer, is there's a fear on our parts as managers, estimators, owners, et cetera, that if we I keep wanting to say raise our price, you're not raising your price, you're properly identifying your costs. The fear is if we properly identify our costs, we're going to miss out on work. That's insane. So tell me if you disagree with that, I want to hear your argument. If you agree with that but haven't changed your behavior, I want to hear your argument. So talk to me.
Just a devil's advocate point of view, I think part of the reason maybe there's some waiting for changing the view is everyone's got an understanding that there will be these costs and there will be a future conversation that everyone's involved with. I don't think that makes sense necessarily, but I think that's, on the lower levels on a job site, that's a lot of the reason for pause and not implementing these things right away is we realize that everyone, owner, GC, subs, are going to have to deal with these costs. And so when is everyone going to address it collectively? Rather than being the first one to start stepping on toes and talking about raised costs.
And I think that's a good comment, speaking to humans and how humans logic through things. It's not a logical response though if your company's putting out bids. Right? Let's say you bid a job, you do a lot of multifamily. Let's say you bid a job. Your company bid a job this week out of LA or San Francisco or whatever, and it had, let's say it had 100,000 man hours in it. of labor. And your company does lots of jobs like that. But now it's actually going to take 115,000 hours of labor. Well, what's 15,000 times 50, right? $750,000. Is that right? Let me do it.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So your company just using that example, your company just put out an estimate that was $750,000 wrong from a cost basis. Now, that doesn't even include the overhead that you would have to carry that. So let's say that's another 10%. That's 75,000. So now we're up to 8.25. And then, of course, your company was banking on some profit on that job. And let's say, I don't know, I don't want to get too far with the numbers here, but you're looking at $1 million screw up that you put out the door. I would fire my estimator or my estimating manager or my estimating VP or my ops manager for doing that. And we're talking about one job. So what are the rest of y'all doing about estimating right now? I'm serious about that because we got plenty of people on this call. What are the rest of y'all doing? I suspect many of you are doing like this company I was in the board meeting today, is they're not doing anything about it. And so while you're thinking about that, I'll tell you about the conversation I had at the end of the board meeting. And so I'm a mentor for the CEO of this company, and he's a really smart guy. What do you think I told him? So after the board meeting is over today, we talked. I talked for another hour, and I talk to him every week. And what do you think I told him this afternoon? In our hour-long debrief after the board meeting. Take a guess. I'll wait till 10 o'clock or somebody can just take a guess. What do you think I told him?
I'm guessing you told him he was nuts.
Well, yeah, in much stronger language than that. Because he was, of course, he was in the board meeting. And in addition to being a mentor you're not just a mentor to somebody for a position in the company. If you're truly a mentor, I'm interested in far more than just his company. What I told him was, Nate, you might want to think about selling the business if you can get an offer right now. If the kind of answers I'm going to get from your business unit presidents is, well, we haven't gotten to that point yet. We don't have it dialed in yet, blah, blah, blah. And so when I told Nate in all seriousness, and he took it really well, is, Nate, I know exactly how much equity he has in the company. He's the sole shareholder at this point in time. I know exactly how much equity is. I said, maybe what you ought to do, Nate, is see if you can find a buyer really quickly for your company at the proper market, the pre-COVID market value. And if somebody makes the offer, you ought to take it because you're screwed, buddy. Because if your business unit presidents and your estimating department and your project managers both, one, can't accurately project where jobs are at so that you have this 4% increase in direct costs in Q1 having nothing to do with COVID. And if you have not already changed your estimating on jobs going out the door, you think Q1 was bad? Wait till Q2, 3, and 4, and maybe you shouldn't wait for all this stuff to hit the fan. And maybe I'll go ahead and sell now because you got your head up your butt. And he took that in the nature of a mentor to protege, and he actually has a whole bunch of kirkisms. He calls them kirkisms written down, and he actually wrote that down because I don't think he will. Obviously, I don't think he's going to sell the company. But the reason I told him that is that, okay, your business unit leaders are letting you down. You best go and kick their butt and get them to make those changes immediately. Somebody, if you disagree with me, somebody tell me why, and then give me a different approach. If you don't know, if you have uncertainty in your system, then you need to accommodate for that. So all of you have uncertainty in your systems right now in productivity, and so why aren't you accounting for it?
Kirk, it's John again from Columbus. I think we're doing what we can to track the costs and like most of the others, I think we're seeing around 10%, but I think maybe we're living in a world where we're hoping that the cost or the impact of it starts to become more normal or kind of lowers along the way to a more standard value of a much lower percentage than what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair comment, John. And so you're waiting, you're waiting for it to normalize before you make any changes. Do you understand my comment though? Is that if you're bidding, let's say you're bidding a job that's going to happen, that's going to be fully built over Q2 or Q2 and Q3, $300,000 job or $100,000 job or $10,000 job, you're going to have these losses. And so therefore you're not accurately estimating. So do you understand? I mean, do you agree with that point?
I absolutely do. I think playing devil's advocate a little bit, but the other things that we're maybe trying to do to mitigate the possibility of these losses while we're still, trying to figure everything out is to modify our proposal templates and include additional language that we would hope will protect us. I included something in the Dropbox for our standard proposal template, at least for moving forward, to hopefully mitigate some of the costs. But I don't, in the end, I don't really know if it's going to work from a legal standpoint.
Well, I think that's a really good comment, and that was one of the things that I was promoting, 3-4 weeks ago, is that you got to change your proposal language. You got to change your language in your contracts, and I hope everyone has done that. I trust everyone has done that, and so I think that's good. I think though moving forward, having said that, now that we all know, I mean, just even the conversation we've had tonight, if we can all predict that we have and project that we have seen losses in productivity, now it's going to actually be harder to get that money than it is on any job that you had already been working on when COVID hit, right? So I think there's two different problems here. One is jobs that were already underway when COVID hit. I actually am very bullish that we will be able to recover many of those costs, if not all of those costs. On jobs you're bidding right now, there's in my book, there's no acceptable rationale for not modifying your cost to reflect your reality. What do the rest of y'all think about that? I like the word that John used, hope, but hope's not strategy, right?
Hey guys, it's Cody with Timely Construction. I don't know, can y'all hear me? Is my mic working?
Go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, I'm very still new to the industry, but I see this as an opportunity more so. I mean, just never letting a crisis go unused, because the whole idea of this class, in my opinion, is just how do we, set our sail to get through all this.
Right.
So, we've already been trying to go back on even previous contracts that we've had with some of our corporate clients and figure out how do we either do it through a change order or just add those costs into it, because with dealing with this virus or crisis, I mean, all costs go up.
Right.
I mean, whether you're traveling or doing after hours or trying to space out your crews, it's just even just the material you have to have on site now.
Yeah.
With gloves and masks. So I don't see why anyone in here wouldn't be trying to find a way to just raise their price just to be able to, hit it at cost and just cover it.
Yeah, see, I agree with you 100%. I think you're right on target, Cody, and this is kind of where we got to get to, is there's two pieces, right? The internal piece and the external piece. The internal piece is, as a eyes wide open contractor, there's no decision to make here. If the purpose of estimating is to identify your true cost, then damn it, you need to do that. And if you're in my company, I'm going to fire you if you don't do that. And so the productivity issues, the PPE, all those kind of things. So that's the internal piece. The external piece then is I now have to go and educate my clients that we have these costs. And so educating the clients is my number one job. Actually, my number two job. Number one job is taking care of my people. Number two is educating my clients. And so I'll use the example with Nick. I have to go to Nick and help to educate Nick that no, let's say we built 3 distribution centers for you over the last 3 years. And Nick is a smart guy, and he's figured out that the MEP for these distribution centers should be X number of dollars per square foot. And we all have those skills. Now my job is to go to Nick and to actually show Nick with numbers, hey, here's what we have had happen to us, and I'm sure you too. And as a result, our labor, we are projecting for example, a 10% increase in field labor hours, not in rate, because the rate's not changing. In field labor hours, and we're projecting an X percentage of increase in consumables, right? So that's PPE is consumables. And so I need you to know this right before anything starts. And this should happen outside of your proposals. This should be us going to our clients and showing them what we have learned since COVID had started and how that's going to affect pricing in the future. Now, that shouldn't be a hard job for any of us if we go armed with the numbers. Now, certainly there's going to be a certain percentage of the customer base that's going to be thinking that you're just trying to gig them or gouge them because of this crisis. Now, you need to just be a better salesman than that and educate them that that's not what you're doing and show them the numbers. Then if you can't get whichever customers that you have that you can't convince that you have additional costs, then you got to walk away. Why do you have to walk away?
It's a bad business decision.
Yeah, because you're committing suicide, right? What you're really doing is if you walk away, or even worse than walking away, is to be a coward and not have steel in your backbone and actually compete on jobs where you are either competing against people who are not as sophisticated as you, and they're not including those additional costs in their numbers, or worse, for you to be in denial and to deny those numbers, which is what you're doing right now if you're operating from a hopeful standpoint and have not already modified your estimating numbers. I'm sorry, you're playing the fool here. And with margins where they are in our industry, you're going to come out upside down. And this, it gets back to where we talked about the very first session, whereas we're going to see companies going out of business, and we are going to do that. I hope it's nobody on this call. I am doing everything I can to make sure it's nobody who I serve on their board, because then I wouldn't get my board stipend and things. But I'm joking about that because that's not why I do it. No, but we got to do the right thing. So action item is you've got to change your estimating right now, and knowing that you're going to have to dial that in and tweak that over time. But if you have additional costs, they need to be reflected immediately. 2, action item, you need to go and sell to customers and show them what you've learned. I think this is a great opportunity then to go and help customers, because you might in fact help them to see what their numbers are. And I think that's a big part of our job. Do you all agree with that or disagree with that?
Kirk, this is Nick from MSD. I can tell you, I'd like to kind of pause there because you just hit on some major things. So we always keep a pulse on, the market and what things are going for. Say on the plan spec side, because the plan spec will tell us where the pulse of the market's at a little bit quicker than the design build will. And we're seeing competition actually lower their bids during this time. And number one, that's not good for the industry. Number 2, they're going to be financially hurting. Some of these organizations had actually some of their personnel subbed out to us prior COVID-19. So it tells me, I think it's also really important to really look at your strategy, look at your market, understand the key clients that you want to be able to partner with, and reach out to them and try to look for the projects to build out that backlog, work with them on the design build, a system. But it's extremely scary to see people lowering their bids than what they were pre-COVID.
Yeah, and I've seen some of that too, and that's insanity, right? And we can't compete with insanity. And so I think the answer goes back to what we're talking about, is we got to educate our clients Well, and this is, to me, I see this as a great opportunity. Go back to I want to parlay your conversation, your example, Nick, is that this is a great example is let's say I'm in your market and I see competition lowering their prices. I feel as if I have an obligation to go to the customers, if they're part of my customer base, to go to those customers and help to educate them, because they're going to get hurt by this. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely, 100% spot on. And a lot of times, if they're only price driven, what's that going? Everybody knows. Everybody on this call knows it's going to be nothing but change orders, and it's going to be a nasty relationship.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we can do it with. I know we can do it without being doom and gloom. But we've got to I think we have an obligation to go out and educate our customer base that, hey, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see some of my competitors lowering their prices to get work because for all of the obvious reasons. But let me show you what we're learning and what we're discovering. And this is me talking to the customer. And surely, if you perform, let's say it's a general contractor, surely if you're performing work, you're seeing some of the same kinds of cost increases. Now, we've talked about labor production decreases. We've talked about PPE increases. We haven't even talked about then helping to educate them about the issue relative to supply chain and materials and timing and schedule, right? We talked about it in other nights, but our job is to go out and help to make the most informed customers that we can. Now, my experience personally over the decades has been, that's how we create new and better customers anyway. But I'm talking about doing this even with customers that I don't have anything cooking with right now, because I think that's how we serve the marketplace. I think we have to do that.
Hey, Kirk.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nick from Wisconsin. I'm glad that Nick Davis and yourself kind of chimed in on this part here. That was one notes I had was, as a GC, the majority of you guys get mad when you feel that we're bid shopping, right? And so now, we're getting all these bids in from you, bidding everything that we're putting out there, and we hire you for one or two jobs and you can't complete the job.
Yeah.
I mean, rumor spread, man. I mean, if Nick's not performing, hey, I don't care if you're union or non-union or whatever your beliefs are, it's going to be spread around the whole county, and that's going to really put a lot of companies in trouble with that. And, a lot of us, I think, need to start almost acting as the paving industry. Toilet paper costs more than what oil does right now. And the paving industry, asphalt guys are not giving any credits back. When they were charging $70 a barrel, they're still holding to that price. So I think we all need to kind of start taking a look at almost going to that mentality a little bit of, hey, we're worth $1. Let's hold at $1 instead of taking a nickel.
Yeah, so I like the analogy. So period. I like the analogy, period. But I'm going to circle back now to something you said a few minutes ago. Is that you said if this was a plain spec job, though, you'd take the low bidder. So square that up for me, because I don't understand that.
If I had the answers, I'd tell you. I mean, that's just how it seems to be. The information and the teaching, from everybody to really show what the value is.
Yeah.
And like you said in your classes, if you're just going to throw a number out there to get the job,
yeah,
and you're low, you're doing something wrong. Where companies need to really step back and be like, is this worth taking a little better? Is, your management, if you're not management, going to accept and own up to what you said, that, no, I'm not taking Jeremiah's number because he was $40,000 less than Nick. I know that this is where it needs to be.
Yeah. So it comes back to, and this is part of why I bring it up. This comes back to basic blocking and tackling. We gotta price the work right. So in other words, we got to identify our costs properly. We have to learn how to market and sell it properly. We have to learn how to persuade customers properly. We had to learn how to get in front of them. We need to be expert at the numbers. And so this is during any kind of crisis, it's always about the same thing it's always about, which is blocking and tackling. We got to be good at the basics of what we do, period. So I think some really good conversations there. I hope you've got some action items, but geez, please go back and fix your estimating right now, because your estimating is wrong. That's before anything else, that's going to kill you this year if you don't go and fix that right now. So now I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to ask a question. How many of y'all, so I know it's going to vary greatly by state. Like in Iowa, there's been a lot less impact. In Boston, there's been a lot more impact, et cetera. So how many of y'all have jobs right now that have experienced or are experiencing some delays because of all of this?
Kirk, it's John in Ohio again. We have a couple prison projects in Ohio. We've actually, one of the projects I was working on is Marion Correctional. It's a job where of the 3,000 inmates, I think almost 2,000 of them, or 2/3 of the inmates had COVID. So they've shut down the project, one that we were nearing the completion of indefinitely. We may be 6 months out before we're back on site.
Yep. Yeah. And how big of a job was that for you, roughly?
That one was about 2.3 million electrical.
All right. That's a good example. Others of you, just want to hear a few yeses. Other of you have jobs that have been delayed or may become delayed. Yes.
So this is Jeremiah here in Iowa. We have not seen any delays yet. However, we are getting some scares in one of our larger projects, where it's a meatpacking plant, and they would definitely shut us down if they have a single case in there. Yeah. So, and that's a large project for us. It's about 15 million. So it definitely hurt us. We'd be losing a place for about 50 people to go.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of just recently a lot of really bad news about meatpacking plants across the country. Yes.
Yeah.
We have here in Indiana, Tyson and in Wisconsin, and I think there's been quite a bit of this going on. Okay, and so the bigger point is on that is another action item is you got to rigorously go back and look at your backlog, and we talked about a little bit of that last week and some in previous weeks, and that was another thing that concerned me in today's board meetings. I'm still the phrase I used when I was talking just to the CEO when this is all over is that what I was terrified by, especially because of their CFO, a really smart guy, and their construction business president, another smart guy, was I was hearing a lot of happy talk. And for me, happy talk is overly optimistic BS. And I absolutely am, from a business standpoint, the glass isn't half full, the glass is overflowing, even if it has a drop in it. That's an optimist I am. But when I'm hearing financial projections, I don't want to hear any optimism. I want to hear realism. And I was hearing a lot of happy talk. And so if you're not reevaluating your backlog for things like Jeremiah talked about, then clearly you need to do that. So I know, for example, I'm listening to Jacob, I know that his jobs are on hold. And so bottom line is this, is every company on this call either is or will experience, I promise you, is or will experience some delays because of COVID. Just take it on, if you don't believe me, take it on faith. So that leads to the next logical discussion is, okay, so what are the costs that we're going to have there, and how do we calculate this cost? So is everybody on this call 100% certain that you know exactly how you're going to calculate all those costs and how you're going to sell those costs, and you're convinced and have conviction that your company's not going to lose a dime because of this? would anybody be willing to go out that far on the limb and say that?
Not unless you have a cost plus.
Say again?
Not unless you have a cost plus job.
All right, unless you have a cost plus, and even then, I think you're going to have some losses. Okay, so good. I'm going to give you all. A situation, and so let me skip down to that.
Well, you're doing that, Kirk. We've had problems with GCs. We've got 2 of them have delayed the job a month, and now they've made the decision to go forward, and they think they can just drop it back into the schedule, and all the subs are going to be able to do it.
Yeah. No, that's a really good comment, Dave, and that's exactly what I'm expecting all customers to attempt to do, is to go ahead and say, nope, the end date doesn't change, and then people are going to drop back in. Now, and sadly, when I think an awful lot of subs will respond is okay, because that's how subs typically respond. But we know for sure, and those of you who know me know for sure, that I always make the same statement. There are only 3 choices that you have in remedying schedule issues, remedying schedule problems, and those 3 choices all cost you money, which means we've got to become excellent at calculating them. And so the 3 choices are adding men. And so how does that add cost?
Well, it's lost productivity, because typically when you're adding people, you're not getting the quality of the guys that you're normally keeping.
Right. So you're not using your core guys. So for sure you're going to have less productivity. So estimating 101 says if we know we're going to have to add men and they're not core guys, we've got to raise our prices. There's all kinds of other implications of adding men, impact to supervision, too many people in the workspace, learning curve, blah, blah, blah. And so those of you who've had my change order seminars know all of those costs. And so that's one additional cost you'll have. The second choice is to work overtime. And we know that's a bad choice. Why is that a bad choice?
Labor-wise, it costs you time and a half.
Right. So you're going to pay 50% more for every single hour that you'd plan on working, and so that's a bad choice. And then the third option is to extend the schedule, and that almost always is the least cost option for the customer and for all of the contractors, but it's also the one that is the least chosen. Why is it almost always the least chosen?
For construction, because them changing over from a construction loan to a permanent loan.
Yeah, because that's right. Because the owner is never going to do that, because whatever kind of owner you have, it's a hospital, a manufacturing facility, an apartment building, whatever it is. Of course, they can't earn any revenue if the schedule until the job is complete. And so, 1, they can't earn any revenue in whatever business they're in, and 2, they're paying a higher interest rate on a construction loan, which they can't convert to a mortgage loan if they do it. And so for everybody in this program, Survive and Thrive, is we gotta work through these calculations. And the first one I want to talk about is the cost for extending the schedule. So I want to give you an example and have you come up with a back of the envelope answer for me. So on the screen now, I've said, do you think it's possible you could have a delay in any of your projects? And most people answered yes. And if you didn't answer yes, you're just wrong. The second bullet is, if so, what's the likelihood your firm will pursue additional compensation? Now, when I say pursue additional compensation, I mean accurately and vigorously from the top level of your company down. And so I don't mean that you're going to try, but then when your customer pushes back, you're going to stop. I mean, what's the likelihood that you actually think that you're going to pursue and draw a line in the sand with your customers about additional compensation for these delays? Oh my God, they all died. I need some truth tellers out there.
I was really waiting for it, Kirk, because I was going to call bullshit.
Yeah, good. That's what I was going to call too. No, I think it's going to be like lemmings running off a cliff. Yeah, we're not estimating these additional losses in productivity, and two, these delays that you're having, your customers are going to try to shove down your throat. And sadly, much of the industry, I'll use the Pareto principle, right? 80-20 rule. Much of the industry is just going to eat it, which means you are going to be paying for the cost implications of these delays, and it's unconscionable for me. So I don't want to get into. We've already had this conversation with estimating, so I don't want to get into why your company might not push back against against the owners. I want to go to the more tactical piece, which is how you should calculate that. So on the screen here is an excerpt from a contract, and this is just from the standard AIA contract. And so I'm looking at 3.2.4. All right, so Ken just posted they had a 24-hour delay on one of their projects, and they just ate it. Again, I think lots of people will do this, and as a shareholder of companies and as a board member, I would have a hard time accepting the company just eating these costs. So here's the contract, and this is excerpted from AIA documents. So these are from AIA 2017 documents. And so 3.4 is excusable delays. I'm going to go down to 3.4.2, which is the middle paragraph there. And it says where the contractor reasonably establishes that delays as set forth above or that are caused by shortage of labor, acts of God, strikes, lockout, tornado, flood, wind damage, fire, unusual delay in transportation, adverse weather conditions beyond the quantity of lost days anticipated in the project schedule per Exhibit X, anticipated lost days due to weather, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then it goes on to say explosion, sabotage, accidents, riots, civil commotion, acts of war, casualty, condemnation, or occurrences, this is the important part, or occurrences beyond the contractor's reasonable control, impact of the cost and or contract time. The contractor shall be entitled to recover all extra costs and an appropriate extension of contract time. Contractor shall provide written notice of the existence of such cause of delay together with backup documentation that verifies the impact in accordance with the contract document. What is that clause known otherwise as?
Force majeure.
Force majeure.
This is the force majeure clause, right? So AIA doesn't use the phrase force majeure. This is force majeure. I promise you, you have this in your contracts. I promise you it's there. So what does it say about the contractor? What does it say about you?
It says you have an out, you just need to pursue it.
Yeah, it says that beyond the contractor's reasonable control, things that impact the cost and or time. All of your customers, most of your customers are going to be trying to shove this right down your throat as far as time. They're going to say, nope, we're not changing the schedule. You just got to suck it up, do it. You need to know that's not true. And then if you have more favorable customers, the other thing that they might offer you is they might offer you time, but not money. You have to not bend over and take that. So I'm going to give you an example here. And so here's the example. And so here it is. So let's say this is your job. And so you had a job, you have an ongoing project that started on November 1st of 2019. And originally the project was to be completed on August 1st, 2020. So what is that? That's, I don't know, 10 months, something like that. And so this is your project. The job did start on time. So the job was underway come February, March of 2020. when the great virus prevailed. So now, because of COVID-19, the project is shut down, and or other delays in the project, which will cause it to not be complete until November 15th. So welcome, Philip. Good to have you. And so first of all, do y'all think that this is a reasonable representation of projects in construction in the United States? Could this happen?
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Of course, this is eminently reasonable. And so the job was supposed to be done on August 1st, and now it's projected to be done on November 15th, which is what, September, October, November. So this is 3.5 months late. I'm 100% certain every company on this call is going to have a project that's going to finish 3.5 months later than planned. I'm 100% certain of that. I don't care what company you're with. Okay, good. So,
Kirk,
yeah, go ahead.
actually, that's why I was late in my call. That's what we're trying to do right now, have a meeting with the client, because our job in South Africa is going to be 8 months late now as a result of this COVID. Yes. So we're trying to see what our costs are for all the delays.
Yep.
And seeing what we can do to recoup some of this.
Absolutely. And all of us need to be in that place. And everybody on this call, the sooner you start doing a good job of calculating the cost, the better. So now this is the scenario. And so now let me take you to a different place. Someone trying to speak up? No? Okay. So let me hang on one second. I want to close one document and open another document and then share those documents. So just give me one second.
So while you're talking about that, Kirk, just going to say from GC, and I hate to do it, to be the good GC, just read your contracts. Read your contracts.
For sure. So, all right. So let me pull this up. One second. Being finicky. All right, good. All right, so I'm going to share this now, and I want you to go ahead and you're all on your computer, so pull up a calculator on your computer or pull out your phone, however you want to calculate some things. This is the first quiz you've had in the whole class. Everything else has been verbal before this, and so now this is a quiz for you. I can't help but give a quiz, and so here it is. So here's the scenario. So I've got a Word document up there. And so you have a project that's been delayed because of the COVID-19 crisis. The delay may have been caused either by a project shutdown, because of state or local orders, or because of other delays, including losses in field production, failure of other trades to fulfill critical tasks on time, etc. So the project details I already began to give you. The job did start on November 1st of 19 as planned. It was originally planned to be completed on August 1st of this year. Because of the delay, the revised project completion date now is 11/15. All right, some details about your company. So this is your company. And so the revenue that your company will create, the actual earned revenue that you will create for the entire contract period for the entire company is $20 million. The revenue that you will earn on this project that we're talking about is $3 million. Your company's SG&A expenses, so your salary, general and administrative expenses for the time period of the entire contract of the job that's being delayed, is $1.5 million. And so the first thing that we need to calculate is what additional general conditions cost do you have for both the project and for your home office And so now I want you to go ahead and calculate whatever you can calculate, but certainly, at least for your corporate office, you should be able to give me a number. So go ahead and do that. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. It's 9:20. I'm going to give you till 9:25 to come up with an answer for at least question number 1, and I want you to take a crack at question number 2 as well. So I'm not going to answer any question. Well, you can ask me some questions, but I'm not going to give you much more information than what you have right now, because you have plenty of information to do this calculation. All right, ready, set, go. And I'm allowing you to have 10% overhead and 10% profit on your cost. Okay, that's it. Your 5 minutes are up. So I want to get. I'm going to take 5 answers from 5 people. First for the corporate extended overhead. So just give me a number, whatever number you came up with. Just for item number 1. Don't make me call on you individually.
Right, 45,000.
Say again?
45,000.
45,000. All right. So I heard somebody's 45. Give me another. Somebody else give me a number. How many of y'all didn't come up with any numbers at all? Tell the truth. So you either came up with a number or you didn't come up with any number.
I came up with 22,500, but kind of cut out at the very beginning of your part of that.
Okay, so 22.5. I got 45. Somebody else. I'll go with 3 answers. I'll go for the apparent low bidder. Somebody else give me a number.
I had 27.5.
27.5. All right, 27. So I got 45, 22.5, 27.5. All right. Did anybody? What y'all come up with on the job site? That one you would have to make some assumptions. Somebody give me something. Lie. Just if you lie, then I'll move on.
37.5.
Perfect. All right. That sounds like a good lie. Okay. All right. So first of all, let's talk about what is extended overhead or what are general conditions?
Monthly cost, whether that job is moving forward or not, that is assigned to that project.
Yeah. Dave, are those real costs?
For the most part, yes, they are.
Yeah, for sure. They're real. It costs every one of our companies money to manage jobs, and they are real costs. And it's a perfectly legitimate calculation that you should be making. Now, sadly, in our industry, we aren't so good at accounting and finance, and so too often we have those costs in the wrong places in our accounting for them. But the reality is all projects have general conditions costs. Now, this is one of the places where general contractors tend to actually have their shit together a lot more than subs. And so I'll go to Nick and Cody. They're both general contractors, and you both know what general conditions are, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So how would you define, Cody, that was you, Cody. How would you define general conditions? I think that was Cody, right?
I'm sorry?
That's you, right, Cody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, general conditions are just basically just the rules of the game in which you're getting ready to place for the job.
Yeah, well, it's sure. And so they're and everyone in the industry, except for subcontractors, understand that general conditions are a real cost. And when you have a delay, I'll put it a different way.
Kurt?
Yeah, go ahead, Philip.
Wouldn't it be we classify as your indirect costs?
Well, you have lots of other indirect costs other than general conditions. Or a company can have lots of other costs that are indirects that aren't necessarily general conditions. And so this really is a good question, because this is one of those areas where terminology becomes part of the problem, especially in the legal realm of dealing with delays. And so overhead in and of itself is a sticky word because typically people don't define overhead properly. And so we do have a good legal and financial definition for overhead. Overhead consists of the cost that you would have if you had no work. Now, when we start to talk about extended overhead and general conditions, it becomes a little bit dicier, because the basis for all of these calculations legally in the settled case law does in fact use the word overhead. Extended general conditions is a better way to speak about these costs. All right, so I know with 100% certainty that 80% of more than 80% of subcontractors never charge for extended general conditions. But I said there are 3 ways that we can remedy schedule issues. One is admin, the other one is work overtime, the third one is extend the schedule. And so almost always extending the schedule has the lowest cost impact to contractors, which is why I'm starting there, because this is where you need to begin to have your discussions with your clients, and it goes back to educating them. So now I'm going to pull up a spreadsheet that I'm going to put in Dropbox for you to make everybody's life easier moving forward.
We've had GCs when what they'll do is when the job gets delayed for an sometimes unforeseen reason, even when it's a design build, they'll issue a no cost change order to add the time. And we've tried to we've billed for extended general conditions, and we're told most of the time we're the only subcontractor that's trying to bill for those. So therefore the answer is no, they won't accept them.
Yeah, no, and I'm laughing because it's so tragic, Dave, right? Is that no, you're exactly right, is that that's what the customers almost always say is no, you're the only one charging for that, we're not going to pay for it. But I was going to say I laugh at them. I do laugh at them. But what we really have to do is educate them. But the bottom line is you can't unsee things. And so let me pull this up. And
but to follow up with that, a good GC does recoup that from the client. It just doesn't tell the sub. I said to follow up to that comment, the GC generally does recoup that cost.
Yeah.
It just doesn't pass it on to the subcontractor.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm not saying it's right, but that happens.
Quiet down over there.
No, you're exactly right, Philip. Is that GCs do this? So GCs understand how this works, and they do this, and then they just bully and intimidate subs then into not doing it. So what you have on your screen now is you have a spreadsheet, and so I'm going to take this mini case that I gave you and just walk through it real quickly because it's pretty easy to understand, and it'll give you then the basis to start to go back and calculate on the projects that you have delayed coming out of COVID. And so on the spreadsheet, if I highlighted the cell blue, that means you're going to enter in your project data. So your job name, your job number, then the planned project start date. And the information I gave you was that this job was supposed to start on November 1st and complete on August 1st. And so that's a data entry point. And then the actual project completion date is, I said it was November 15th on the sheet, but I guess I did it on here for the 14th. It doesn't make any difference. Then, of course, what the spreadsheet will do for you real simply is to calculate your actual planned calendar days. And so I'll just double click on that and you can see the dates there, right? So the planned start date was the 1st. Finish date was August 1st. Now, most contractors, especially subs, I think, tend to think in terms of work days. And I understand that because that's how we estimate things and we look at our crew sizes and those kind of things. But when we're talking about extended overhead or extended general conditions, we need to calculate it based on calendar days. Why is that?
Well, generally weekends or
Yeah, but so certainly it includes weekends. But why? Why am I going to go to the customer and say, hey, you know what? I'm calculating this based on calendar days and not work days. It is the right way to do it. Tell me how you explain that.
Well, you still have rental costs, business costs that are going through the month. So you're doing a full term, whereas you're not doing a weekly or whatever.
Right. They're renting your company, right? When you pay your mortgage, you pay the mortgage for all 30 days. When you pay for your utilities, you pay for utilities for the month. And so the explanation that you have to make to the client is that you're renting my company because that's what they're doing. They're absolutely renting the company. And so this calculation is always based on calendar days. And so we have our planned calendar.
Kirk, a good example of that is everybody, when you rent a piece of equipment, they're renting it on a 28-day cycle. Yeah. So they're charging you 13 months for a 12-month rental.
That's exactly right. I'm making a note to myself about rentals as well because some new things have come up with the PPP and some other loan programs that I want to make a comment about rentals. And so,
Kirk.
Yeah, go ahead.
Generally, on your definitions, it is advisable to put Georgian calendar days, so there's
Yeah.
no misunderstanding, especially on the international projects.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So we have our planned calendar days, which is in yellow. It's just, it means it's a calculation. And then we have actual calendar days, which is same thing. It's just it's your actual calendar days. And so now we know, now we can calculate how many days of delay. And so again, the calculation. And so in this example, on the example I gave you, we have 105 days, calendar days of delay. All right. So if we want to know how much this impacts our company, then we look at our total SG&A expenses. I said that was $1.5 million. That was given in our example. You have to enter that data in for your company. And so again, this is the SG&A for the entire contract period of the company. So it's not annual. It's based on, if this was a 14-month job, then it's your total SG&A for that 14 months. So it's not a calendar basis. It's actually elapsed time. Same thing for revenue. What was your actual revenue during the entire contract period for the entire company? And then finally, what was the revenue on this project that's been delayed? When you plug that in, then this calculation is made. And so this is just your the actual revenue of this project divided by your total revenue for the company times your total SG&A, and that will tell you definitively that $225,000 worth of our overhead, our corporate overhead, went to support this job. I think that's obvious from doing the calculation. And so now so that's the total overhead that went to support the job. And so now what I have to do is I have to figure out what the daily cost is to rent my company. And so that's this calculation. And so very simply, this is the 225 that we just came up with, divided by the actual calendar days. And that will tell us that $594, it costs $594 a day, a calendar day, to support this job. And then this job we calculated above is 105 days over. And so there's nothing to negotiate here in my world. There's nothing to negotiate. You owe me $62,335 of cost. Now that's cost, which means I still have to have overhead and profit on it. And so that's $62,000 worth of cost that you owe me. That's not negotiable. It's absolutely not negotiable. So that's for my company to support this job. Period. Then we go to the project, right? So there's two different buckets. One is the corporation. The other is the job site level general conditions. And so this is the part where you would have to swag it. But so I have a spreadsheet for you here of the typical things that we would have on the job site. And so I've got an office trailer at a rental cost of $400 a month on sanitainer, and you got the list. I'm not going to go through the list. So we've got copiers and plotters and pickup trucks and Trimble, and then we've got project supervisory personnel, because that is part of your job site overhead as well. And so this is based on monthly. And so I've got a piping general foreman, his wage and salary at this, sheet metal superintendent, electrical superintendent, project engineer, project manager. And you have all of those costs plus their vehicle, their phones, and their expenses. And so for your company, obviously this is going to be somewhat different, but it still gives you a template. And so for everything in blue here, what you have to do is you just have to enter in what your monthly cost is. And then of course the spreadsheet will go ahead and turn that into a cost per day. And so for this job that we're talking about, this $3 million job, that's $1,292 a day that was calculated. And since the job stopped on 3/17 and of this year because of COVID, stay-at-home orders, all those kinds of things. And let's say it doesn't start up until June 30th. For some of you, you are in states where your jobs may not start up until June 30th or beyond. In other states, they'll start May 1st or May 15th or whatever. Even most of the states that were May 1st is looking now. Most of the governors are pushing out to May 15th. Some states never stopped, Iowa being one of those. So this is 105 days again, and so this number right here, $135,000, is simply your cost per day to support that job times the number of days delayed, and that's $135,000. So now I'm going to add those together. And so we have the $62,000 for the corporate overhead, extended overhead, the $135,000 for the project extended overhead. So then our total cost is $198,000. And then we're ending from our contract. Let's say the contract that you signed allows you to have 10% overhead and 10% profit. And so those are the calculations. And so for this job that a few moments ago you said was reasonable, that you should expect that you're going to have jobs like this that are delayed. In my company, I'm going to go and get $239,000 to the owner of this project owes me $239,000 as a minimum, and I'm not lying, cheating, and stealing. And so, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and prove that, Justin. So Justin wants to annotate this, and that's fine. So Justin, you can go ahead and annotate it now. So first of all, do you think you have these costs? We'll start with that question. Do you think you have these costs? Everybody say yes.
Yes.
All right, good. So you can't unsee it. You have to, as an action item, you have to do this calculation and take it back to your customers. And I don't care what the magnitude of scale is. Let's say you had a job that was delayed for a week and the total project value was only $10,000. The calculation is still exactly the same. And so you should go and make those changes. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Yes.
You have to do this. And so now you have a choice. Let's say you're a project manager. I've got lots of owners on this call, but I also have project managers. And so let's say you're a project manager and you do the calculations and you go and tell your owner, your boss, that you're going to go and you're going to go and present this to the customer. And your boss tells you, no, you're not. We're not going to do that. What's the next thing that then you have to do as my project manager?
You need to say, well, my bonus is based on this loss.
No, absolutely. You need to. No, you're exactly right. You need to look me in the eyes. I'm the owner. You have to look me in the eyes and say, okay, boss, you can't have it both ways. We are going to. I am, as a project manager, I'm going to write this job down by $217,000. So I won't write down the profit, right? Because you never even considered this, but I have to identify. My job as project manager to identify all the true costs on the job and project them properly. And so we will have all of the $198,000 worth of cost, plus any cost you have in your company. You also have additional overhead costs on top of that. So I'm going to write this job down $217,000, and that's how you give your boss the backbone to go and get in front of the customer's face to go and get paid what's due to you, which is the $239,000.
The one question I have for you, Kirk, is if you're figuring your corporate overhead cost and you're figuring the project overhead cost, but then you're charging them 10% for overhead cost, aren't you a little double dipping at least on that first 10%?
Yeah, Dave, I think that's a really legitimate question, and that is the thing that I would negotiate. I'd be willing to negotiate with the customer. As I could make an argument that I have additional costs that aren't included in that, but I also would be willing to negotiate that. And I might even, negotiating is always about the beads, right?
Yeah.
And so this is one I'd be willing to take that to zero, and I would consider that a win. Now, my counter argument back to you is, yeah, but the contract allowed 10 and 10, but that was for normal risk. This is an extraordinary risk. And so by rights, that really should be 10 and 40. Right. I mean, but I certainly would be willing to negotiate that. But what I would not be willing to negotiate is doing it at my cost, which is $198,000. I certainly need to make some profit on it. But that's a really good question.
Yeah.
Other questions and thoughts? None. So that means everybody's going to go back and do this immediately. Yes.
Well, I was just going to ask, how does the owner pay for that? Is this actually on insurance? They pay for that through insurance?
Yeah, this would be a builder's risk issue for sure.
Okay.
Delays are typically considered builder's risk, and they should be able to go to their insurance company and get paid for it. And my job, and I love the question, Jeremiah, because my job then is to help if their insurance company pretends they don't know about this and they don't think you should have to pay for it, I'm perfectly willing to talk to the insurance and to the surety and to help them to understand. Let me be this is me talking to the owner. Let me be your partner, and I will bring in case law. I'll bring in 100 different examples. I'll show all the calculations. I'll be 100% open book. I'll help you make and get this claim from your insurance company. And I think that's my job. So for the GCs that are on the call, and we've got a number of y'all. Talk to me about this. I am pitching to all the subs that are on the call that they come to you and they present these costs and should expect to be paid. So tell me about how you feel about that.
It's actually common practice. There's nothing extraordinary. One thing I am kind of surprised on, and I assume that the folks in the call are doing that, is all of this is defined from the onset, meaning that you do have a 10% or whatever for your administrative costs for doing these type of claims already defined in your contract.
Yeah. And I like Philip's comment, because Philip, and I appreciate all of you on the call and in the class. Philip plays in an international marketplace and on a higher scale, but he's 100% right that this is common practice in the contracting world across the globe, except for the typical PHCC subcontractor or ABC subcontractor or IC subcontractor, which is the shame of it. All right, but this is in fact common practice, and so this is an action item. Is that and this just happens to be a COVID example, but this is standard practice that you need to adopt. Anybody disagree with that? Okay. All right. So that's an action item coming out of this, is that you need to start calculating those costs and then helping to educate the customer, and then go and get that money. All right, let me come back to we're starting to get short on time here. First of all, did anyone apply for the PPP money, and did anybody get any of the PPP money?
I applied for it. We have for a little over a week been listed as what our interest rate is and that it's in closing, but I haven't been able to contact the bank to get it. Does that mean that there's money allocated from the first time, or are we ready to wait for the next round of funding?
Yeah. Well, that's good. It sounds like you're close. And the second round of funding, it has been approved. It passed the Senate tonight, and the president will sign it tomorrow. Now, it's only $310 billion, so it'll go fast. But if you're already in, the thinking is if you're already in line and you've already been approved, that you will get a payout. It's quite likely that if you're not in line, the line in front of you is going to be too big. Did anybody else get any money?
Kirk, this is Brad with MSD. We applied for it and we did receive it.
You did receive it. All right, good. Do you mind me asking how much you got?
It was over $2 million.
That's good. And how much of that do you think is are you projecting is going to be forgiven?
Probably in the neighborhood of 60 to 70%.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're updated. There's been a lot of discussion about what, we had some of this discussion last week about what you can use this for and what you can't use it for. And one of the things I told you last week is that you don't have to spend all the money on payroll by June 30th, like lots of people have been saying. And the new rules came out today in that to clarify that. And it's also part of the new legislation. And what I told you last week is true. And also the whole idea of leases. I think that most people had the understanding last week and the week before that you could only use it for the lease for your physical space, so your shop and your office. And now that's also been clarified in what just got passed tonight, which is any leases. So that's equipment leases, tool leases, those kinds of things. And so that dramatically changes the number to all of our advantages, those of that applied for it. And so that's all good news. So if you haven't applied, again, there's three pieces here. Tonight we've talked a lot about the operational cost piece, and that's always an important piece. We talked a little bit about the sales and marketing piece. That's also a big piece, and we'll continue to talk about that further. And then the third piece is the capital piece. And we haven't talked about that a lot, but I have talked about it in previous nights that, folks, if you need to go after this money, this is capital allocation and capital acquisition 101. This is cheap money, and there is absolutely no reason for you not to go at least try to get this money, whether you have or not. And so if you haven't, go after this next tranche and try to get some of it. And now I also want to point out to you that most of the people, I'm not sharing, am I? Most of the people, even most of the people who went after the PPP loans didn't go after this next piece that's on the screen here, and that's the Main Street loans. And so probably most of you are not familiar with the Main Street. Is anybody familiar, or has anybody gone after a Main Street loan? Doesn't sound like it. So Dan, you haven't, or Brad, you guys haven't gone after it?
No, I'm not aware of the Main Street, Kirk.
All right. So for everybody on here, you need to go. I'll put this PowerPoint in Dropbox as I always do. But Main Street loans are the big block of money that the Federal Reserve has made available, and that is outside of what the Congress has made available. Remember, the Federal Reserve is independent. And so the Federal Reserve created what's called the Main Street loans, and this is a very large pot of money as well that has not been tapped at the same level that the PPP loans or the disaster loans have been. So this is another opportunity. Now the money's not quite as cheap. We know the money for PPP is going to end up being about 1%, whatever portion isn't forgiven. This is going to be between 250 and 400 basis points. And so what that means is between 2.5% and 4%, that's still cheaper than your line of credit. All of you, that's still cheaper than your line of credit. And so an action item, certainly for the owners that are online here, or for the project managers who should go and talk to your owners, is you need to research the Main Street loans, because this is another avenue of capital, and you need to be parlaying doing the capital play right now. We talked last time about cash flow and those kinds of things. I have an updated cash flow forecast, a 13-week forecast for you that I'll roll out to you next week that includes not just your project's cash flow that we looked at last week when we were doing this, but also now starts to look at your line of credit, and then also loans like the PPP loan and the Main Street loan. So now I've incorporated that into my cash flow projections, and so I will put that up for you. I'll put that up for you if you guys are interested. Are you interested in seeing the next iteration of that cash flow statement, the cash flow projections by quarter?
Yes, Kurt, I would be interested.
I definitely would.
All right, good. So I will put that up there. All right, so let me come back to the slide that I didn't start with. That gives you the kind of recaps what I planned on doing tonight, and then what we did do and what we didn't do. So I didn't do the roundtable as much about how everybody's doing and where everybody's going, and I think that's okay. The House did pass that. House and the Senate now have both passed. Senate actually passed it first, and the House passed it tonight, and so it'll be signed tomorrow or tonight. I talked about efficiency accelerators. I talked about so you have a board meeting come up. I didn't talk tonight about the jobs report that comes out every Thursday. We had another 4.4 million file for unemployment, and that gets us to 26.4 million unemployed. I will recount to y'all another board meeting I had on Tuesday with the utility that I serve on. And I actually had two board members, this is only a 7-person board, 2 board members tell me this week that all those unemployment numbers, those are bullshit numbers. They're not true. What is your response to that?
It's an actual count of people that have applied. How is it bullshit?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, David. These are freaking numbers from the Department of Labor, people who are filed for unemployment. Yet people are letting their politics get in their way of their business. And I'm asking all of you, I don't care about your politics, to please not do that. These are real numbers. And so it just is mind-boggling to me that we're dealing with people who allegedly are intelligent people who let their impression from wherever they're getting information to somehow muddy their thinking. This is real data, period. And then, of course, you know what they follow up on is that these people are unemployed are now making more money than they filed for unemployment, which is also bullshit. So please be more professional than that. Ongoing list of topics. I just included them. The PowerPoint, we didn't talk about it. We didn't need to talk about it. I assume you went back and did your risk matrix. I hope you did. I assume you went back and did the lost productivity spreadsheet, and then we did talk about COVID-19 and its implications to estimating, and you have some action items from that coming out of tonight. I've mentioned my 10 commandments, but I encourage you to go through the slides and look at that, because I spoke especially really harshly to commandment number 1, and so take a look at that if you're so inspired. I didn't talk about current OSHA and CDC guidelines, although in this week's PowerPoint I gave you some updated links to that, and there's especially some really good pieces in there that you need to read. There's a 35 page OSHA piece that I encourage all of you to read this week. It's 43 pages in Spanish. I think you should read it in Spanish if you have your Spanish-speaking employees read it. I did talk about loan programs. I didn't talk about CFMA benchmarking, so I'll do that next week. I didn't get into ratio analysis, so I'll do that next week as well. And then we did do that little project delay piece. And so now we only got 3 minutes left. So now I'll ask, this is an important time to ask two things. One, I'll cycle back and ask you to do me a favor and go and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then also go to my LinkedIn page. And if you're not connected with me, connect with me. And then I'll ask you, if you feel so moved, to do a recommendation. The second question, and I mean this legitimately, are you still finding value in having these conversations?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, very much so.
Yes.
All right, good. Then I had set a date out there for when we'll continue these, and so it is my plan to continue to do this unless I come on one night and nobody shows up, and then I'll know. I think we're still doing important things, and so I appreciate all of your comments. I saw a tapering off this week. And part of the reason I asked that question, I saw a tapering off this week of y'all sharing things that you're producing, and so I'd like to see kind of an uptick in that if you are producing new things, even if it's just a list of questions. I'd love to see more activity in the participants folder as far as questions, issues, problems. That would be useful. But nonetheless, I think we did good work tonight, and I really appreciate your comments. Any closing comments, questions, thoughts, or action for me?
I guess, Kurt, what are we going to do as a group going forward as far as changing the COVID, for instance, insurance requirements? What is the offshoot of this? That would be interesting to know.
Okay. All right. And so still on insurance, I still think insurance, supply chain, I think we still need to work through all of our additional cost. What else, folks? What other questions do you have? Questions or thoughts?
Kirk, on that Main Street, is that looking at being forgivable or not?
So parts of it are and parts of it aren't. It's less forgivable than the MPP. But for me, even if none of it's forgivable, if I can borrow $10 million at 2.5 points, I'm going to borrow, and I believe I have the cash flow to support that. I'm going to buy, it's capital, right? I'm going to take that capital. I was talking to another owner today, he's going to, if he gets it, he's going to actually buy out, buy out his partners that he's already working on buying out, talk to somebody else who's going to use it to make capital investments that they otherwise wouldn't be able to. And so this is about, preparing to come out of this. And so it really is, the thriving part. So, yeah. So probably the better way to look at it is cheap, low cost money that can be amortized over a longer period of time. That's outside of your line of credit. All right, other questions or thoughts? If not, I bid you good night and be safe, and don't get stupid because you've stayed at home too long. Stay smart. And if I don't have any other questions, I'll hang on till the last person's gone. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Kurt, and everybody else.
Hey, thank you, Kurt. Really appreciate you.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thanks, guys and gals.
Thank you, everyone.
Kirk, going back to that cost analysis.
Yeah.
What happens, or how do you project if you don't have an extension to the date, but they're still expecting you to get done in time, but you still have a delay? I mean, you obviously have a delay. Do you factor in overtime and the number of hours there, or how would you approach that?
All right, so there's a couple of pieces to that question. One is, and this is a really good question, because typically you can't calculate the actual final number until the job is actually done, right? Because we don't know what's going to be done until it's done, right? But what we do is a pro forma calculation, right? And it's that's relatively easy to do. So pro forma calculation that projects your daily cost, right? And so, for example, back on I could pull it up, but I won't. But on the job level, general conditions, we know what they are. And so we can give them. It's going to be. I think that number I gave you was like what, $596 a day. So that's good because that could give them impetus to want to finish the job in a more timely fashion. Of course, that answers the other part of your question. Is that the other thing? One, they're going to be arguing to not give you days. Right. Then the next thing I'd argue is to not give you overtime and not give you the other costs you have. And so then this gives you leverage in making that argument about time and a half and or the additional cost of adding men, right? All of those other impacts. So it all goes together part and parcel. So the short answer is you need to do the calculation for both the corporate level and the job level, come up with your projected dollars a day. So for example, on the corporate level, you don't know spot on what your revenue is going to be for the entire company over that period. But if you're making revenue projections, you can make a projection that says our pro forma projection is X and it's based on this. And the nice thing is since you don't lie, cheat, and steal, if when this job is over 6 months from now, it is Y instead of X, well, then you just change that number, whether it's higher or lower, right? So that's the cool thing about being transparent. So short answer, make a pro forma calculation based on, and then get that. You need to get in front of the client now with all of those numbers to show them, hey, look, here's what we're anticipating. How can I help you? You need to do that right away. And then next week, I want to talk about developing the other two sets of costs in addition to the other things we're going to do. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. What else, guys? Hi, John's daughter. Wow, she's getting big, John.
9 years old.
Oh, my goodness.
Why is she still up at 10 p.m.? I don't know.
She wanted to give Dad a hug.
Yeah.
Well, it's only 9 in Wisconsin, so.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
So, Kirk, I guess, how does that go back to that whole cost analysis added on for subcontractors, if a GC has it incorporated into their contract, the verbiage of pretty much at no cost unless deemable by the owner.
Yeah, for me, the answer is simple because this, especially right now, is because the force majeure issue, right? And so that all bets are off. This really is generally is a classic force majeure case, and that's how I'm going to argue it. And this time around, this pandemic, I think we're all going to be successful if we argue our case well. The next time, I think it's going to be different based on your contracts.
Now, and does that go with, as a GC, if I was to give you an AIA contract, obviously there is force majeure included. But if I have my own standard that deviates from the AIA,
yeah,
does that affect it then?
Yeah, no, my comment is this, and so yeah, I've talked a lot about all kinds of different contracts, right? So custom contracts, uniform contracts. So this time around, if I'm an attorney for anybody who's making that claim, I think I'm going to win. I really do. This is about as most unusual. Well, in my 46 years of doing this is